the 29th of August, as we are taking a moment and taking this afternoon to commemorate the 19th year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina and the 3-year anniversary, commemorating the 3-year anniversary of Hurricane Ida. Folks still recovering, so we can imagine what you have been through in the last 3 years with Ida for our folks down in St. Bernard Parish or down in St. John the Baptist Parish, and even the folks down in the river parishes, Houma, Thibodaux, in those areas. And believe it or not, there's still people trying to recover after 3 years. Yes, indeed. After 3 years, they're still trying to recover. So one thing we are going to do today, we're going to, I guess it's probably feasible for me to say to a lot of people, because I've noticed that sometimes when you talk about Hurricane Katrina, you end up with folks that have PTSD and don't want to go through it and can remember. And I'm not trying to bring up those old feelings and stuff, but we never want to forget. We never want to forget those that lost their lives, those that have been affected by this. You want to, give them a moment to think about, some of the things that they went through and hearing some of those stories as well. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off with that famous telephone call that happened between the mayor of New Orleans, who was then Ray Nagin, and former radio host Garland Robinette, God rest his soul, which ended up going viral and going all over the world. We'll start off with that, and then we will come back, and you may want to call somebody and tell them. Then we're going to come back, and we will have a live conversation with former mayor Ray Nagin. Here's that telephone call.
This is coming, that is coming. And my answer to that today is BS. Where is the beef? Because there is no beef in this city. There's no beef anywhere in southeast Louisiana. And these goddamn ships that are coming, I don't see them.
What did you say to the President of the United States, and what did he say to you?
I basically told him we had an incredible crisis here, and that his flying over in Air Force One does not do it justice. And that I have been all around this city, and I am very frustrated because we are not able to marshal resources, and we're outmanned in just about every respect. You know the reason why the looters got out of control? Because we had most of our resources saving people, thousands of people that were stuck in attics, man, old ladies. When you pull off the doggone ventilator vents and you look down there and they're standing in there in water up to their freaking neck. And they don't have a clue what's going on down here. They flew down here one time, 2 days after the doggone event was over, with TV cameras, AP reporters, all kind of goddamn, excuse my French, everybody in America. But I am pissed.
Did you say to the President of the United States, I need the military in here?
I said I need everything. Now, I will tell you this, and I give the President some credit on this. He sent one John Wayne dude down here that can get some stuff done. And his name is General Honoré. And he came off the doggone chopper, and he started cussing, and people started moving. And he's getting some stuff done. They ought to give that guy, if they don't want to give it to me, give him full authority to get the job done. And we can save some people.
What do you need right now to get control of this situation?
I need reinforcements. I need troops, man. I need 500 buses, man. We're talking about, one of the briefings we had, they were talking about getting, public school bus drivers to come down here and bus people out here. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is a national disaster. Get every doggone Greyhound bus line in the country and get their asses moving to New Orleans. They're thinking small, man, and this is a major, major, major deal. And I can't emphasize it enough, man. This is crazy. I've got 15 to 20,000 people over at the convention center. Is bursting at the seams. The poor people in Plaquemines Parish, they're air vacuuming people over here in New Orleans. We don't have anything, and we're sharing with our brothers in Plaquemines Parish. It's awful down here, man.
Do you believe that the president is seeing this, holding news conference on it, but can't do anything until Kathleen Blanco requests him to do it? And do you know whether or not she has made that request?
I have no idea what they're doing, but I will tell you this. You know, God is looking down on all this, and if they are not doing everything in their power to save people, they are going to pay the price. Because every day that we delay, people are dying. And they're dying by the hundreds, I'm willing to bet you. We're getting reports and calls that is breaking my heart from people saying, I've been in my attic. I can't take it anymore. The water is up to my neck. I don't think I can hold out. And that's happening as we speak. And you know what really upsets me, Garland? We told everybody the importance of the 17th Street Canal issue. We say, please, please take care of this. We don't care what you do. Figure it out.
Who'd you say that to?
Everybody. The governor, you know, Homeland Security, FEMA, you name it, we said it. And, you know, they allowed that pumping station next to it, Pumping Station 6, to go underwater. Our Sewage and Water Board people, Marcia St. Martin, stayed there and endangered their lives. And what happened when that pumping station went down, the water started flowing again in the city, and it started getting to levels that probably killed more people. In addition to that, we had water flowing through the pipes in the city. That's a power station over there. So there's no water flowing anywhere on the east bank of Orleans Parish. So a critical water supply was destroyed because of lack of action.
Why couldn't they drop the 3,000-pound sandbags or the containers that they were talking about earlier? Was it an engineering feat that just couldn't be done?
They said it was some pulleys that they had to manufacture, but, you know, in a state of emergency, man, you are creative. You figure out ways to get stuff done. Then they told me that they went overnight and they built 17 concrete structures, and they had the pulleys on them, and they were going to drop them. I flew over that thing yesterday, and it's in the same shape that it was after the storm hit. There is nothing happening. And they're feeding the public a line of bull, and it's spinning, and people are dying down there.
If some of the public called, and they're right, that there's a law that the president, that the federal government can't do anything without local or state request, would you request martial law?
I've already called for martial law in the city of New Orleans. We did that a few days ago.
Did the governor do that too?
I don't know. I don't think so. But we called for martial law when we realized that the looting was getting out of control, and we redirected all of our police officers back to patrolling the streets. They were dead tired from saving people, but they worked all night because we thought this thing was going to blow wide open last night. And so we redirected all of our resources, and we held it under check. I'm not sure if we can do that another night with the current resources. And I am telling you right now, they're showing all these reports of people looting and doing all that weird stuff, and they are doing that. But people are desperate, and they're trying to find food and water, the majority of them. Now, you got some knuckleheads out there, and they are taking advantage of this situation where, you know, we can't really control it, and they are doing some awful, awful things. But that's a small majority of the people. Most people are looking to try and survive. And you've got, one of the things people have, nobody's talked about this. Drugs flowed in and out of New Orleans and the surrounding metropolitan area so freely it was scary to me. And that's why we were having an escalation in murders. People don't want to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it. You had drug addicts that are now walking around this city looking for a fix. And that's the reason why they were breaking in hospitals and drugstores They're looking for something to take the edge off of their Jones, if you will. And right now, they don't have anything to take the edge off. And they've probably found guns. So what you're seeing is drug-starving, crazy addicts, drug addicts, that are wreaking havoc. And we don't have the manpower to adequately deal with it. We can only target certain sections of the city and form a perimeter around them and hope to God that we're not overrun.
Well, you and I must be in the minority because apparently there's a section of our citizenry out there that thinks because of a law that says the federal government can't come in unless requested by the proper people, that everything that's going on to this point has been done as good as it can possibly be.
Really?
I know you don't feel that way.
Well, did the tsunami victims request? You go through a formal process to request? Did the Iraqi people request that we go in there? Did they ask us to go in there? What is more important? This is, and I'll tell you, man, I'm probably going to get in a whole bunch of trouble. I'm probably going to get in so much trouble it ain't even funny. They probably won't even want to deal with me after this interview is over.
Well, you and I'll be in the funny place together.
But we authorized $8 billion to go to Iraq. Lickety-quick. After 9/11, we gave the president unprecedented powers. Lickety-quick. To take care of New York and other places. Now, you mean to tell me that a place where most of your oil is coming through, a place that is so unique, when you mention New Orleans anywhere around the world, everybody's eyes light up. You mean to tell me that a place where you probably have thousands of people that have died and thousands more that are dying every day, that we can't figure out a way to authorize the resources that we need? Come on, man. I'm not one of those drug addicts. I am thinking very clearly. And I don't know whose problem it is. I don't know whether it's the governor's problem. I don't know whether it's the president's problem. But somebody needs to get their ass on a plane and sit down, the two of them, and figure this out right now.
What can we do here?
Keep talking about it.
Okay.
We'll do that. What else can we do?
Organize people to write letters, make calls to their congressmen, to the president, to the governor. Flood their doggone offices with requests to do something. This is ridiculous. And I don't want to see anybody do any more goddamn press conferences. Put a moratorium on press conferences. Don't do another press conference until the resources are in this city, and then come down to this city and stand with us when there are military trucks and troops that we can't even count. Don't tell me 40,000 people are coming here. They're not here. It's too doggone late. Now get off your asses and let's do something, and let's fix the biggest goddamn crisis in the history of this country.
I'll say it right now. You're the only politician that's called for arms like this. And if whatever it takes, the governor, president, whatever law precedent it takes, whatever it takes, I bet that the people listening to you are on your side.
Well, I hope so, Garland. I'm at the point now where it don't matter. People are dying. They don't have homes. They don't have jobs. The city of New Orleans will never be the same in this time.
We're both pretty speechless here.
I don't know what to say.
I gotta go.
Okay.
Keep in touch. Keep in touch.
All right. You have been listening to for the last, 12, 13 minutes of a telephone call that went viral nationwide, internationally, from, God rest his soul, Garland Robinette, and former Mayor Ray Nagin as everything was happening for Hurricane Katrina 19 years ago. I was actually a little bit remiss to play that, and let me tell you why. Because I didn't want to create a situation where people were going to have PTSD by listening to it, and I'm hoping that we did not do that. But in remembrance of what occurred here 19 years ago, I just wanted to make sure that we never forget what a lot of us went through. Now, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. When we do come back, we will have a live interview. We will be talking with him next. Former Mayor Ray Nagin is standing by, and we will be talking with him in just a few minutes. You need to go ahead on and tell everybody to make sure that they are tuned in, because he will be live with us next. Everybody hold tight.
Hey, this is Steve Poston. Be sure to listen to WBOK 1230 AM every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. and Sunday evening at 5 p.m., bringing you the best Southern Soul barroom music with the Southern Soul Weekend Party Mix, hosted by me, of course. I'll be playing your favorite Southern Soul music by artists from all over the South, right here on WBOK 1230 AM or online at WBOK1230.com. The station you listen to longer. Listen to longer. Listen to longer.
New Orleans, this is Jamar McNeely, Chief Executive Officer in Spinola Charter Schools. I'm excited to invite you to an incredible event you don't want to miss. The NOLA Love, Inspiration, Advocacy Rally featuring legendary Bishop T.D. Jakes. Join us on September 6th at 10 a.m. at Xavier's Convocation Center as we come together to uplift our community, inspire change, and advocate for the future of our youth. This is your chance to be a part of something truly powerful. RSVP now at inspirenolaschools.org. We'll see you there.
Andronica Morris, host of Put Housing First. Join us every Tuesday at 12 o'clock, where we will discuss how housing affects every aspect of our lives and what's necessary, what's needed to guarantee housing for all. Join us every Tuesday at 12 o'clock as we dig down deep onto the issues that affect all of us.
Making a difference in the community. WBOK 1230 AM.
All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. Gerard Stevens with you. It is the 29th of August. As we take you back 19 years, what were you doing when you heard those conversations about what we learned about Real Quick, Fast, and in a Hurry? The words contraflow, the words move out, get out. What did we learn? Even when Dr. Blakely came through and was talking about, after all of this stuff, when we come back, you're going to have cranes in the air. It's going to be cranes in the air. And then everybody looked at Dr. Blakely like he was crazy because there were no cranes in the air. I got a chance to see one of my heroes. Let me rephrase that. I saw one of my heroes. And I called her a hero of New Orleans because a lot of folks really don't know her story as well. And that was Dr. Cynthia Willard Lewis. I saw her this past weekend because she was the guest speaker at the Women's Day at Pentecost Church, Pentecost Baptist Church. And a lot of folks don't know the story of what Cynthia Willett Lewis did as not only as a council person, but as a senator and representing the district of New Orleans East. And she was one of the main fighters that went against the folks that said, oh, yeah, we're going to green dot your area, and you won't be able to return. We're going to green dot New Orleans East. And Cynthia Willett Lewis was one of those that was out there fighting to make sure that that did not happen. So we want to give her some homage and praise, as she was one of those that said, I got too many people that are doing different things and living their lives and want to be able to come home and fix their house up. Why would I want to green dot that area? Why would I want to green dot that area? And did you learn the lessons that we got taught? Quick, fast, and in a hurry. What do you mean the lessons? The lessons of insurance companies can play games, and the Road Home program was a disaster inside of a disaster. Let me say that again. The Road Home program was a disaster inside of a disaster. And I still think there were a lot of people that just didn't get the right amount of money that they were supposed to get for their homes as of today. Now, I know that there are plenty of folks in the other outlying parishes as well that are still dealing with Hurricane Ida. How long ago was that? 3 years ago? Three years ago. But what I did learn also was the fact that I ended up listening to the politicos that wanted to say this organization did wrong, this the Republicans did this or the Democrats did that. And I got to tell you, during this time where we were trying to survive and get our homes back up, we had a governor who was a Democrat. But we had a president that was a Republican. That was George Bush. And I think all of us were all hoping that, hey, wait a minute. I'm hoping that this is not ending up being a political issue more so than trying to help the people that needed it the most. And seeing all of the despair that was happening in our city with the folks that were waiting for the folks to come get them out of their water. But what did we learn? And did we learn that it's not going to happen again? Did we learn that? I don't know. Reverend Wallace, what you say? Reverend Wallace? Did we miss him? That's all right. We'll get it. We'll get it back. All right. Joining us now, the former mayor of the city of New Orleans, and also the person that probably gave all the directions and saying, "Hey, get my people out there water." Former mayor Ray Nagin is on the phone with us. How you doing, Mr. Mayor?
What's up, G-Man? You all right?
Oh man, I don't know if I just shot myself in the foot with that PTSD listening to that telephone conversation that you had with Garland Robinette, telling him to get my people out there water. I was like, boy, this reminded me a whole bunch of stuff then.
Hey man, that was a hell of a time, and I hope the city never goes through it again. I'm just finishing up Chief Riley's book, man, and that brings me back to all of that madness, man.
Yeah.
It's something else.
Yeah. Usually this time I try to make sure that we not celebrate this, but to at least memorialize it and all the people that died during that time. But there are a lot of things that you saw that a lot of people may not be privy to. And I know as the leader of the city, you had to try to keep a lot of that stuff to yourself anyway. You don't want to get on television and express it. But 19 years ago, it doesn't seem like 19 years, but what did we learn? What type of lesson do you think that we learned to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again?
Ooh, well, I mean, there's so much to that. I think the biggest thing we learned is that the levee system that was in place at that time was insufficient. I mean, highest levees were at maybe 10 to 12 feet high, but the waves that came in were almost 20 feet high. So we learned that we needed to upgrade that system in a significant way. And then I forget the name of that what is it called, a Mystigo?
Yeah, Mystigo.
Yeah, that was something that was cut, a canal that was cut to allow for the oil and gas companies to move stuff back and forth, that contributed to or created a weakness in the overall system that contributed to the flooding that we had. The other thing I will tell you is that it's amazing to me how now hurricanes are getting even stronger,
right?
because of climate change. And I think back to how deceptive Hurricane Katrina was. If you recall, it got in the Gulf, and she crossed over northern Florida, then got back in the Gulf, and we really couldn't tell exactly where she was going until a couple of days before she actually hit. So I'm not sure if we learned more of how intense those storms can be, but directionally, where they ultimately going to end up, I don't know if we've really gotten that down pat yet.
You did something that I think I told you this last night. I was at my condo. I was laying in the bed and I turned on the television to see some programming that I was waiting for, and you had a press conference on. It was you and your team. I think the Homeland Security Director and a couple of other folks, the police chief and other folks were there at EMS, and you said something that I think that we are learning of this, but I think it was the first time that it had been used, and that was contraflow. And you were telling everybody we're going to move out the lower levels or the lower areas first, and then we're going to give you the go signal for the folks to be able to go. Was that the first time that we had used contraflow as a state?
I think it might have been the first or the second time. I can't recall. But it was the time that contraflow really benefited us. I don't know if you remember, but I was chairman of the Regional Planning Commission, and I had worked with the parishes around the surrounding parishes to come up with a plan to ensure that the lower lying parishes would get out, and then New Orleans would get out at an appropriate time. And I think it was like, I can't recall exactly, but it was a number of hours before a storm was scheduled to hit. So, and by turning the highway that is normally allowing citizens to come into the city, by turning those around and forcing all the highways to go out of the city, it allowed for more cars to leave the city, and it pretty much worked. I mean, there was never a time that I've seen in the history of this country where 95 to 96% of the people are evacuated from a major city area, really a metropolitan area. And I will never forget, man, people still come up to me today from surrounding parishes, and they basically thank me for alerting them that this storm was that serious and that they were going to be allowed to use contraflow to get out. And many of them got out, and their homes were destroyed.
One of the things too that I know that a lot of folks can appreciate is the fact that you were like, hey, look, you all need to understand something about this storm. This one is not like any other. It's going to be some devastation. Your house will probably not be able to withstand it. And I was like, withstand a storm, because I had never been in one myself. And I was like, what do we expect here? And you said a lot of devastation. If people stay, it's going to be a lot of death. I'm like, wait a minute. I need to get up out of here. And
Well, you know, I had to try and get people's attention because many of us New Orleanians had not been through a storm like that ever in life. And the last one that hit was maybe like 30 or 40 years ago before.
what was that,
we had
Betsy?
a lot of flooding.
Right.
So the sense of urgency that I was trying to create to get people, you know, to not be complacent is why I had to speak so strongly about what was getting ready to happen. And all the local news media stations, they shut their doors and they got up out too.
Mm-hmm. Frustration. That's a good word to use. I think it came over pretty well at some point. As the mayor, you had to, of course, hold a certain level of calmness about yourself. But as this thing kept going on, you were frustrated. Explain some of that to me, why you had gotten frustrated with the way that the process was being handled.
You talking about after the storm hit?
Yes.
Oh my God. My frustration level really started to build as the devastation unfolded and 80% of the city was flooded or damaged. People were on their rooftops. Many had died. And we had done everything in our power as a local government to rescue as many people, to get people out of harm's way. We opened up the Superdome first, and then we had to, you know, kind of barge our way into the convention center to get as many people out of harm's way. And I thought at some point that the state and federal officials would recognize the gravity of the disaster we were dealing with, and they would send all hands on deck down to New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And as the days continue to pass, that did not happen. The breaches and the levees were not being capped as quickly as I thought. The buses to rescue people from the heavy waters or rescue them from the convention center and the Superdome just didn't materialize for 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
We can get an aircraft carrier on the other side of the world quicker than that, but they wouldn't come and rescue us as quickly as I thought. And then to top it off, I had some people to visit from the state to come down, and it was just a kind of a camera event where they had video cameras. And then after they left, I thought they were going to send help. And all they did was do press conferences bragging about how things were under control and they were doing good work. And that's when I went on with
Garland.
WWL radio to really tell them what was really happening.
What was this a political move? Do you think it was more political? Because I know that we had a Democratic governor, but also a Republican who was in the presidency. And it seemed to me that there was some issue of them working together. And then the question I think that was posed to you was why we just didn't ask for it. But your answer to them on the radio was, did they ask for all these other things? Did they ask for these things for these other places that had disasters?
Yeah, politics, unfortunately, became a big stumbling block to really getting the resources. We had a Republican president in George Bush, and we had a governor, Kathleen Blanco, who was a Democrat, and then we had Democrat senators, and they all were more concerned about, in my humble opinion, about how they were coming across to the public versus actually activating the resources that were needed. And then I was trying to encourage them to give General Honoré, if they didn't want to give me the authority to get things done, to give it to him. Mm-hmm. And next thing I know, the state was claiming that the feds couldn't come in because of some posse comitatus act.
Right.
Something that was put in place during the Civil War era.
Right.
That basically said the federal government couldn't come in to do policing-like activities unless invited in by a governor. And this was designed so that the federal government couldn't enforce anti-slavery stuff that the states were doing. And it's still on the books today.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What did
but they
we
were going
learn, though?
back and forth, and it was just extremely frustrating.
But what did we learn too? Well, let me do this. Let's talk about General Honore when he came in, because everybody saw him. As a matter of fact, I'm still in awe of a photo that I got a chance to take, because I got you on one side, I'm in the middle, and General Honore is on the other. I was like, these the two men that saved everybody's lives.
Well, General Honore, you know, I've said this story many times. He was amazing. He came in on a helicopter and he started, you know, barking orders and getting FEMA to move, and he wouldn't take the BS that they were giving us, and he wouldn't play politics. He just wanted to get stuff done, and you know, he was a driving force in the recovery.
Yeah, I got a chance to really become friends with him after that fact, and he's been on here on the station several different times. But I was thinking to myself, I was like, you know, these are the types of folks that I would like to have in charge whenever there's a disaster, to be able to get stuff done and be able to get people out before there's an issue of life being threatened.
Well, I would agree with that, but like I mentioned earlier, if you've got politics that tend to dominate what can actually happen with silly laws like the Posse Comitatus Act, then you know there were impediments. And you know, Gerard, I'd be honest with you, man. If there was another Hurricane Katrina, God forbid, the same kind of scenario, I think you know this could happen again. I hate to say that, but it's quite possible, because the laws are still out there, and if anything, the politics in this country are even more divided, even more divisive right now than they've ever been.
Well, let's go back to Katrina here for a minute. I want your thoughts on this one. And this one might take the rest of the show, but I'm willing to say, okay, you got this. If you had to go back through all of it, from the time that you're getting the weather forecast from the National Weather Service, you talking to the meteorologists and having to make these decisions about the city or the last place of resort, which was the Superdome, and all the other decisions that was made during that time, what would you have done if you overlooked it? What would you have done differently?
Oh, wow.
If anything.
Yeah, I just think back to, you know, what could we have done to even encourage people, more people to leave the city? Could we have made more noise? Could we have pre-staged Greyhound buses to get people out after the storm as quickly as possible? Could we have pre-staged more boats to be able to go out and save more people? Could I have been more encouraging to the governor and to the president to work together closer than what they did? I mean, there's so many things that I think about we could have done better, or even to think through and challenge the Corps of Engineers to make sure that the levee systems would have been sufficient enough to handle a storm like Hurricane Katrina. We spent billions of dollars upgrading the hurricane protection system to much higher heights than we've ever had before. Maybe we should have thought about that before. The contraflow, I think, worked okay. I mean, you know, I don't think there's ever been a city that has evacuated the number of people or gotten the people out of harm's way as we did. Maybe we could have opened up the convention center sooner to get more people out. I mean, it's just looking at what happened and trying to figure out what could have been done quicker and better. And I don't know, man. I hope we never have to go through it again.
There's something I don't even know if anybody ever said this to you, but one of the things I give you a whole bunch of credit for, you and Sayon Quiet, who was your communications director at that point in time, because I even made the mistake of going on the air and talking about why this building wasn't open and yiddy, city building should be open. All you need to do is gut it and replace the sheetrock and going up in there to make sure the AC is done and da-da-da. One thing you did after I said I had to go back and I made a mistake in saying this. You Seon, and whoever was head of, I forgot the man's name. He was the head of capital projects at that time.
Okay.
Came in and sat down in my office on the second floor of the radio station and said, "We brought the book." I said, "What book?" You said, "I got the book, which is the schematics of all the buildings that the city owns."
Right.
And one of those things that I learned at the time was you kept using words that I said I never thought about using a word. And one of those words I never forget, because you one of the first ones said, you said, after we dewatered the system. I said, dewatered? What do you mean dewatered? He said, gee, we had to get all of that water out of the city. He said, we got these guys came in, what was it, from Denmark or somewhere?
Yeah. Look, man, the big thing that I think, people know, but they really don't know, is that the city of New Orleans is shaped like a bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And the closer you are to the lake or to the river, that's the higher ground. And once you get a breach of that system, the water's going to flow, man.
Right.
And then I'll never forget Marcia St. Martin, who was over the Sewage and Water Board. She kept advising me. She said, Mr. Mayor, these pumps are working, but I'm really concerned because the power station, I think is somewhere in Carrollton,
mm-hmm.
the power station is getting ready to flood. And she kept telling me that, but it didn't dawn on me until she told it to me about 2 or 3 times. She said, when that power station floods, none of the pumps can work. And when that happened, the city flooded, and we had to send out the pumps to get them refurbished before we could start pumping again. And then we had people from Denmark to come in to help us to get the water out. And then the water was contaminated.
Contaminated, yeah. So that's one of the words that I had learned from you when you started talking about dewatering. And then I was like, oh, okay. But you went on also to say, look, there's no way in the world that I can tell you that we're going to gut these buildings and then put everything back up and then open those buildings up for folks. He said, I got all this mold. And then the other thing was you found out that, these buildings that were sitting in that water for weeks at a time, that water was corroding the infrastructure of the building and weakening the infrastructure. And I never thought about, you set pipes and lead pipes in or studs in the water for a certain period of time, it's going to corrode them.
Look, man, 80% of the city was not only flooded, it was damaged and corrupted
mm-hmm.
by the flood waters.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here's the other thing that compounded things. The federal government, they passed a lot of money and was supposedly sending it to us, but they sent it through the state first and then to us last, which complicated things. But in addition to that, before we could spend any of that money, we had to do environmental reviews and assessments and submit that. And instead of them allowing us to do an environmental assessment for the whole city, we had to do an environmental assessment for each individual project.
Wow.
Which slowed things down tremendously. And it was a bunch of stuff, man. It was almost like there was a force out there that didn't want to see us recover.
Wow. And I have to give you a lot of props. You didn't go nowhere. I mean, at some point in time, I was telling you, I was like, bro, you need to slow down a little bit or something. You was like, man, I got to get it done. You
know what, man? People got mad at me, especially the local press. God bless their souls. They had evacuated to other parts out of the city, out of state, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted me to travel to their new studios or temporary studios to do interviews. And I was like, oh, no. If you guys want to do interviews, you got to come into the city, and we'll make sure that you get an escort to come in. And then they got upset because I was doing national interviews because the national people were here.
Right.
So I was not going to leave the city, especially when people were still in the Superdome and in the convention center.
Well, I just want to say every year, like we usually do, thank you for what you did. I know that your family was worried. Everybody was worried. And you were not only talking to the folks of the city that were all over the country, but you had no problem in standing up to some of the political folks, including the President of the United States at that time.
Yeah, that was something, man. But you know what? When all of our citizens were suffering, man, that was the thing to do. And then, people started calling for moratoriums in the lower Ninth Ward and other parts of the city, and not calling for a moratorium on areas that were closer to the Gulf of Mexico or had lower lying areas in the lower Ninth Ward. So, I felt the need to speak up for all of our people, whether they were black, white, or indifferent, and to basically say everybody had a right to return, and I was going to make sure that the president and the governor also held to that standard.
Let me ask you this here before I let you go, because one of the things that I think was a must-read that any and everybody should have was your book, Katrina Secrets.
Yeah, that's still out there. You can get it on Amazon.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to try to find out. Did you still have any of them still out there?
Oh yeah, there's at the community bookstore they still have them, and people can order them or get a copy. Yeah, but it'll give you an insider's look at everything that we went through, and I've updated and revised it a little bit, so it's a little more streamlined. And it's easier read. So, if you want to check it out, it's got good ratings on Amazon. You can learn a little bit from that.
Yeah. And then last but not least, my condolences on the loss of your dad.
Yeah, thank you.
Because I know that wasn't highly publicized a lot, maybe here in the city, but from us to you and your family, that we want to make sure that we say our condolences. And look, this is an open microphone for you whenever you need it.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the good wishes and prayers from all the people around the city and around the country. Hey, sometimes life throws you some curveballs, man. You just gotta, absorb it and keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Mayor, thank you, sir. I appreciate the conversation. Always good, and thank you for your service and what you did for the city.
And thank you, sir, for keeping the citizens informed, and keep doing what you're doing. And I'll be back whenever you need me, man.
All right. Appreciate you again, sir. Thank you much.
God bless you.
All right, you too.
God bless the city.
Bye-bye. All right, that is former Mayor Ray Nagin, who was the mayor of the city of New Orleans during this time of Hurricane Katrina. Coming up, we got to take a break. We'll come back. You smelling good. What that is? We got our guest in the building. She already done looked at me and said, shut up, be quiet. Yes, indeed. More coming up, folks. Everybody hold tight.
This is Monica Pierre along with Sally Ann Roberts Daybone, co-host of Your Power is On.
Your Power is On gospel music show is coming on at a new time. Tune in Sunday mornings from 7 to 8 a.m. for music that feeds the spirit. Get your Sunday on.
Right here on WBOK 1230 a.m. and WBOK1230.com, the station you listen to all day long.
It's no secret that in New Orleans, we love good food just as much as we love our community. So why not make groceries while supporting local food producers too? Crescent City Farmers Market hosts year-round, rain or shine, where you can buy the region's freshest in-season produce, dairy, meat, seafood, and more. Using SNAP benefits at our market is easy, and with Market Match, you can double your dollars. Yes, that's right. Swipe your EBT card and we'll match every SNAP dollar, doubling your grocery budget so you can purchase more fresh fruits, vegetables, and food-bearing plants. Check us out on social media and visit us at marketumbrella.org for dates and locations. See you at the market.
Visit DePaul's new Algiers Health Center at 2801 General de Gaulle Drive to receive primary and preventive care for both adults and children. Services also include behavioral health, imaging, and on-site pharmacy, vision, Medicaid enrollment assistance, and more. For appointments, visit DePaulCommunityHealthCenters.org or call 504-207-3060.
WBOK is pleased to announce the reboot of Crosstown Conversations with host Gene Nathan. A heightened focus on cultural entertainment events and the creatives who present them. The new time is now Saturday at noon. Tune into the stories of our exploding creative scene with Gene Nathan on Crosstown Conversations.
Here we go. The Reality Check on WBOK 1230 AM.
All right, folks, welcome back. 504-582-9422. Coming up at the top of the hour, we've got news. Right now, let's go to the phones. What you say, Terry? Terry?
How are you?
T left? You left?
Hey, Chief.
All right. Who's on 3? What we got on 3? All right. So coming up at the top of the hour, we've got news, and then coming up in having more conversation. Reverend Wallace? That's Reverend Wallace? On 3? Oh, okay. Reverend Wallace.
Hey, big brother, I want to commend you and WBOK for the visual that you constantly stand in the gap as a torch, a light, and this dark New Orleans area. I think they ought to pass gun laws. They ought to pass legislation, mandatory legislation for Louisiana, especially New Orleans. You get free swimming lessons because you don't need it. Amen.
Well, you know what? Big Duck has been one of those that has been an advocate for that. He said, you know, when a child is going to school, one of the first things that he or she should learn, since we live in a city that is surrounded by water, that they should be able to learn and get their library card. They should learn how to swim and get their library card.
Swim. I think Mr. Carter should take initiative and get that legislation going and talk to the governor. I'm so proud of Ray. I thank God for him. You know, we fall down, we get up. I'm glad he's coming out of his cocoon. He's doing what he's, you know, there's a lot of people out there really, you know, appreciated what he did at the time. He, you know, that DNA came out of him, you know, that hood rat came out of him. And when he had to say what he had to say, because he was seeing what he was seeing. I bought his book, so I've been reading the book. And it is factually a lot of stuff that he's saying that you could see that it took place. And he was in one of those catch-22 situations that he had to step up. And I want to tell you, Gerard, you have been a great advocate for the city of New Orleans. Even though you come out of the condo sometime, I appreciate that, you know. You've done a good job with WBOK, and you're a voice in the wilderness, man. I appreciate what you do on a day-to-day basis. I appreciate WBOK. And don't worry about getting smacked on side of the face by some pity-ante attorney because he's going to pay for what he said.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that is true. They filed suit, so, you know, I can't do nothing else about it.
Fight a good fight. Keep the faith. Keep doing what you're doing, brother.
All right. Talk to you in a bit. All right. Coming up, we will continue on with our conversation about Hurricane Katrina, what they went through, some of the stories that we may not have heard. Plus, we get a chance to talk about the new book. As a matter of fact, I saw you on television this morning, bro. I was sitting there going like, stop looking off. You know, I was critiquing you the entire time. So I just want you to, I'm going to critique you on the air live. He gonna call me a couple of names when the mic go off. But anyway, we got more coming up, y'all. We got news at the top of the hour, and we'll come back. Our guests in the building, we're going to have a conversation with 2 chiefs. Not 1 chief, but 2 chiefs. The former chief, the former interim chief. They both in the building right now in the conversation. So everybody hold tight, and we'll take some more of your telephone calls. News is next right here at WBOK.
WBOK 1230 AM New Orleans, home of the Reality Check, weekdays 1 to 4 p.m.
This news report is brought to you by New Schools for New Orleans.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. United Airlines flight attendants have approved a strike if they don't reach an agreement with the airline. For now, off-duty flight attendants are marching on informational picket lines. The flight attendants want raises, job security, and retirement benefits. Arguments were heard in a Missouri courtroom Wednesday over the pending execution of a man convicted in the 1998 killing of a Post-Dispatcher reporter. This despite the St. Louis County prosecuting attorney having filed to vacate the conviction against African-American Marcellus Williams. The CDC says 6 more people have died from an outbreak of contaminated deli meat. Since May, 9 people have died and nearly 60 have been hospitalized by a listeria outbreak connected to Boar's Head Meats. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
New Schools for New Orleans wants to welcome all of our teachers, school leaders, students, and families back for the 24-25 school year. In addition, we want to send a big shout out to our education community for all of their hard work this past school year. Orleans Parish improved students' learning mastery plus by 2 percentage points since last school year. Also, New Orleans Public Schools grew 3 percentage points in the areas of English language arts and math in all grade levels. Let's continue to make more academic gains this school year.
we remember this day 19 years ago. This is the memorialization, I call it. I don't know if we just want to call it, we don't want to call it any celebration, but maybe a remembrance of Hurricane Katrina. And for our folks 3 years ago, we had a remembrance of Hurricane Ida for the outlying areas. I think that this has been considered, Hurricane Ida was considered maybe your Katrina, but I hate to do a comparison because a lot of folks will be like, they have no idea what we went through for Hurricane Katrina. But during that time, the police chief for the New Orleans Police Department, who was in office at that time, trying to direct his men and women to hold the line. Former police chief Juan Riley is in the building. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How you doing?
Welcome. And a lady who is the interim police chief, but also directing the NOPD and was on the police force for 30 years? Is it 32?
33.
33? Was it 33?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know you was that old.
I'm not. I'm that young.
Our good friend, and she is in with us, Michelle Woodfork. How you doing?
I'm great.
Welcome. Is this a somber type of time for you all? Does this kick off PTSD or any of that? Because when I was listening to Ray, because I played that interview with Mayor Nagin when he did it with Garland Robinette. Mm-hmm. And when I played that, I was like, it just kicked me into another mode at that point in time.
You know, and then when we reflect back, I heard a little bit of Mayor Nagin on the radio a little while ago, but we didn't have communications back then,
mm-hmm.
so we didn't actually know that the mayor had made that statement on the radio because we had no communication. So it began to spread that the mayor had, and what people were saying is the mayor had cursed out the president of the United States in support of us. That wasn't the. No. That's how the story went mm-hmm. when it got to us, and so we all believed that the mayor was fighting for us because we were kind of out there on our own. Right. We expected more assistance. We expected it sooner, and so to us at that time, we believed that he was fighting for us, and which he was. But there's something else about that. People have no idea during that time how Mayor Nagin, from 72 hours before to the weeks after, how supportive, how compassionate he was for the men and women of this city, the citizens, law enforcement, first responders, his administrative staff. You had to be in a room with the compassion that he showed. He was concerned about the citizens and the people, and you cannot capture that in a book. You had to be there. The reason he called General Honore the John Wayne dude, because things began to roll. And I was in one of those meetings when the general asked, what could he do? Mm-hmm. And when the mayor explained to him what those things were, I never forget that General Honore said, you'll be amazed what your United States military can do. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, he stepped out of there. And within days, everything started happening, where we felt like we were by ourselves. But again, General Honore was great, but to Mayor Nagin, the compassion and leadership he showed, nobody can capture that. Mm-hmm. You had to be there to experience it.
Chief Woodfork, you also stayed.
Sure.
I know I'm not supposed to sound like that was surprising that, but were you expecting what you saw, and where were you and what did you see? Because I don't think I've ever had that conversation with you.
Right. Well, to answer your first question, you asked, what do we feel when a day comes up or when we reflect back on it? For me, it's a little bit of both. A little bit of sad because there was a lot of loss during that time, but it reminds me of how resilient the city and the citizens of New Orleans are, and how we came back, and how we galvanized and worked together to bring the city back, and the New Orleans police, the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department, to make it safe. And Chief Riley probably doesn't even remember, but I was probably a sergeant at that time. Mm-hmm. And we were riding down Convention Center Boulevard, and they had, of course, all the people out there.
Right.
They didn't have any water. And so when he stopped us, he was right there, the Harris Casino, and he stopped. He's like, hey, guys, what are y'all doing? It was like, well, we got a trunk full of water. We're just going to go. He said, absolutely. He said, go and give that water out, come back. but he was out there with us. He was out there, you know, trying to comfort and calm the people who were on Convention Center Boulevard. So when I think about it, I think about how resilient the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department were, how they really came together as a team, and it showed the greatest leadership you ever want to see, because Chief Riley was out there with us. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't. We didn't see him. We saw him every day, and he asked, "Are y'all okay? Did everybody eat? Was anybody need anything? Everybody's families are okay." And a lot of people just did not forget that type of leadership.
Right. Was there needed, or was there a time? And both of you probably can answer this one. Was there a time though that the men and women of this police department needed to see professional help?
Absolutely. You know, we ultimately, I don't know if it was maybe 2 weeks later, I don't remember exact time frame, when, and this goes back to Mayor Nagin, I believe we were in a staff meeting. This is 5 or 6 days after the storm. We started getting more and more reports of officers abandoning the city. It was actually Captain Harry Mendoza. We were in a staff meeting, and we were saying we have to find a way to stop officers from leaving. So we were checking in the hotels. Hotels were allowing us to check in. But by then, there was no heat, so all the rooms started smelling like mildew. So everybody, we didn't have a place to stay. So it was Harry Mendoza who said, maybe we can get a cruise ship, right? So I went to Mayor Nagin. I walked through the water was about 5 feet. I walked across the street from City Hall to the Hyatt. I met with the mayor where he was conducting business, and I said, Mr. Mayor, we need a cruise ship. He's like, how the hell am I going to get a cruise ship, right? And was like, got to call FEMA. We'll see what we could do. All I can tell you is within 72 hours, cruise ships were rolling in. That first cruise ship rolled in. So then things began to be a little bit normal. But prior to that, we had run out of water, right? I tell you, Walmart's general manager over on the West Bank, we went in, people were looting. The general manager was there. We helped him get some vital information out. And he said, take over Walmart. He said, whatever you all need, use it. Don't worry about it. Take it. Any citizens need anything,
let them have it.
Let them have it. So when some of those reports of people looting, police officers looting, the general management gave us that. And then they start sending truckloads of things in. So the chaos, but back to your original question, how do I feel about it? I got probably 8 text messages from my former staff just reminding me of where we were, what we were doing 19 years ago today. You have to move on and put things behind you, but it's impossible because, I often think about the 700 people that are still missing that have never been found since Katrina rode out of here.
And then, of course, the 1,200 buried at the end of Canal Street that we never knew who they were.
In 1800 on the Gulf Coast, with including Mississippi and Alabama. So, it's never, as much as you get over it, it's kind of like, when my mother and father have passed. So obviously on the days that they pass, on their birthdays, it brings back good memories and bad memories.
I'll tell you this. I don't think I ever told you this before, but I don't think it's a secret to anybody. You and I talk all the time. But one of the things too, and I ask you different questions like this, I look at your face and I see you like blink out as you're like reliving all of these different things that you went through, that you saw. One of which I can repeat this because you said this. I think you were at Communications, or you were talking or standing there with the ladies from Communications as a phone call came in. This is also in your book,
right?
And you said you're listening to this man or woman who is losing it because he was in his attic and he had his child with him. Tell that story.
So, we're in a communication. It's 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And it was Andrea Skipper, who was the supervisor at the time, when I walked in with some of my staff members, and all the dispatchers are crying, right? And I'm like, Skipper, what the hell is going on? Why are they crying? And she said, Chief, you need to just listen in. So she gave me some headphones. I plugged into the 5th District station, and all you could hear was chaos, people begging and pleading for assistance, that the water was up to our necks. My babies are drowning. My husband is falling off the roof. My husband was blown off the roof. And you have dispatchers, some of them are even hyperventilating, right? Because this chaos, and they know it's 5:30 in the morning. The storm has just really rolled in. We got another 5, 6, 7 hours of this. We can't send anybody out. The winds are 130, 140 miles per hour. Anything over 60 miles per hour will blow over an SUV, blow a car off the road. And they're telling them to get to the highest part of the roof, bring some tools, try to be able to get out, and giving them hope and telling them that we're coming when they know we weren't coming, right? And so they're crying because we knew we were hearing people die. We knew we were hearing people take their last breaths. And on top of that, I'll never forget, we were checking in with the district stations, and we're talking to Captain John Bryson, who was at St. Claude General Hospital. He was on the second or third floor looking out the window. And just 10 minutes earlier, a lady said, my husband was blown off the roof. My children were blown off the roof. And then you hear John Bryson saying, it looks like a man, and it looks like a couple of kids are floating down St. Claude Avenue. So those things were tearing us apart. And these were citizens of New Orleans. And we were against a force that we could literally do nothing with but try and hang on and survive until it was over with.
Wow.
So those stories were over and over and over.
And the chilling, the most chilling one I heard was a police officer stuck and begging
Chris
and
Abbott.
pleading. Yes.
Officer Chris Abbott.
It's like, I'm gonna, you can hear him on at that time we still had radio contact, so we can hear. And he was begging and pleading and said he was on the roof of his house. Please, somebody come get me, help me, I'm gonna die.
This was actually
so
before he got out.
It was man, it was gut wrenching.
Where were you?
And just on that,
I was actually assigned to the 3rd district.
Okay.
And we were housed at LSU Dental School.
Okay.
And we went in, I don't know about, when did we all have to go in? About 5, 6 o'clock? Maybe the sun was going down.
The night, the day before, somewhere around 7, 8
that
o'clock.
we had to put as many cars as we could park up right on the Wisner overpass, because the 3rd district is now where the Deutsches house is.
Okay.
And so we were housed in LSU Dental School, and so we were just hanging out, talking. I mean, you couldn't do anything, so everybody's talking, playing cards, whatever they were doing, right? And at some point, I fell asleep, and I woke up at about 1 a.m. and I saw the lights blinking. I'm like, why are the police lights on? The cars were covered. And so, of course, it sent the electrical systems in the car haywire. And so the lights were blinking. The overhead lights and stuff were blinking on the cars. And I was like, oh, my God. And by sunrise,
Wait a
we went
minute,
up.
the cars blinking.
They were covered in water. The entire vehicle was covered in water, and so it sent
it messed
the car up.
electrical system.
And by the time the sun came up, we went up. They have a landing on that building where you can go up to the very top and look out, and I could see the entire fairgrounds were covered, all the houses, everything. You couldn't see the roofs of those houses. Very top.
So what was your mindset then? What the hell?
I was like, how are we going to get out of here? And then, there were people police officers who couldn't swim. And we were going to have to get out at some point. We didn't know when, but when we didn't know if the water was going to be down or not. We wind up having to get out in about 6 feet of water. If you could, they asked everybody who could swim, stand on this side, everybody who can't stand on that side. And it was like 3 people that could swim. I was like, oh my God. And so they had some boats, Wildlife and Fisheries actually came and got us maybe 3 or 4 days after. Came and got us out of that building. And so, and I think at some point, everybody thought, am I going to stay here? Am I going to do this? What? We having the same clothes on for 5 days, the same wet shoes, the same wet jeans or whatever, BDUs or whatever, it gave you pause. And I went, when we first got out, we were dropped off right at 610. You could see at that time, the San Bernardino Housing Development, they had people getting them over to that part of the interstate too, the 610. And they were putting everybody on deuce in the quarters and bringing them down to the convention center. Well, they had all packed up and had 3 of us left. They didn't have enough room. We couldn't get on. And just and I got to say this, God bless the dead Ricky Jackson. And some guys who were he's a police officer that passed away a couple of years ago. He and his crew, they were all assigned to FBI, but they were New Orleans police officers. They had a truck. And they're like, come on, Michelle, we're not going to leave y'all out here. Y'all get in the back of the truck with us. And they said, but we want y'all to see how bad this really is. We went on the interstate right over Elysian Fields, and you could not see the stop sign at Elysian Fields in the 610. And it was mind-blowing.
You know, Gerard, there were, for instance, when we finally evacuated police headquarters, which was probably 36 hours later, and this is actually probably 12 or 14 hours after the storm passed. We left out of headquarters. We're on the back of a Deuce and a Half, which Michelle explained is a military vehicle that has these.
Right, high water vehicle.
Exactly. So we had to get on a boat to get out of headquarters to get to Tulane and Broad to get on a Deuce and a Half, right? Because around headquarters was flooded. So we're going up Tulane Avenue and there's no water, and we go to the Dome. We get to the Dome and we see these cars turned over. Well, people had parked their cars on City Hall's elevated parking lot. Tornado hit that area. Cars were flipped over onto the street. Then we saw everything that happened to the Hyatt, all the windows blown out.
Right.
We saw the hole in the top of the Dome, but there was no water on the street.
Right.
So we're like, we're going to be okay. Right? We get on the interstate to go east because we had a number of people's phone numbers and addresses that the 911 operators had said were stranded, that were citizens. So most of that was in the east. So we get on the interstate on Tulane and we're driving east. We get to Claiborne. Everything is fine. It's not. You can see the wind damage. But then when we got to Louisa Street on the interstate, as far as you could see was water. And all you could see was rooftops. It was like being in a Twilight Zone. You went from a little bit of chaos to mega chaos to like, this cannot be real what we're seeing. And we're seeing people on rooftops from the interstate. And you could, as far as you could see nothing but rooftops and tips of rooftops. We're like, Jesus Christ. But what you did see were police officers who got their own boats.
Right.
Police officers who went commandeered people boats that were out there saving people and bringing them to the interstate, right? And unfortunately, those people had to stay on the interstate almost 24 hours because we had nowhere to bring them. And, I mean, you could not write this stuff. You could not script this stuff. This is beyond. Mother Nature is nothing to play with.
Yep.
Absolutely nothing to play with.
I'll tell you what, before we keep going, let's take the break. We'll take the break. We'll come back. We'll have some more discussion in just a minute. Y'all will also invite folks, because I know there are a lot of listeners, too, that got their own Katrina stories. We want to hear theirs, too, as we commemorate the 19th year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina and also the 3rd year anniversary of Hurricane Ida for our folks out in the river parishes. More coming up in a minute, y'all, right here at WBOK. WBOK thanks you for being a valued listener. You can expect the best talk shows filled with information, questions, and opinions. We do ask that if you'd like to make a comment, feel free to do so. But please keep your telephone comments to once a day, please. And be mindful to other listeners who'd like to get their comments heard as well. If you're a new listener, we invite you to participate in our on-air and online conversations and let the world know that you listen to WBOK 1230 a.m.
New Orleans, this is Jamar McNeely, Chief Executive Officer in Spinola Charter Schools. I'm excited to invite you to an incredible event you don't want to miss. The NOLA Love, Inspiration, Advocacy Rally featuring legendary Bishop T.D. Jakes. Join us on September 6th at 10 a.m. at Xavier's Convocation Center as we come together to uplift our community, inspire change, and advocate for the future of our youth. This is your chance to be a part of something truly powerful. RSVP now at inspirenolaschools.org. We'll see you there.
Hey folks, it's Dr. Shepherd. You know me. I've got something special for you. Write this number down. 504-858-4696. That number is for you if you're having hair loss issues, no matter what the issue may be. It's for an all-natural ingredient formula derived by my mom, a pharmacist, in 1971. And trust me, it works. Give us a try. You can get your hands on it right now. Call 504-858-4696.
Hello, I am Bishop Fred A. Caldwell Sr., host of the Know Your Bible International radio broadcast, which is heard here on WBOK 1230 AM each Sunday morning at 8 o'clock AM. So join me here for a blessing, won't you?
Making a difference in the community. WBOK 1230 AM.
All right, folks, welcome back. Gerard Stevens with you. Thursday afternoon, the 29th of August, as we commemorate the 19th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and listening to some of the folks that it affected and those that I would say we need to say thank you for your service and what you did for this community. And, of course, we want to say hello to our Councilman Oliver Thomas, who's also on the phone with us. Councilman?
Yeah, how you doing, man? I think, first of all, this is a spiritual month. I think sometimes people forget I was the only elected official who was here that's still around during that time, right? That was here when the levees broke, when the hurricane came at 6:10 a.m. in the morning, when it got to Pearlington, Mississippi, between 10 and 10:30 a.m., when we got in our cars and went to the interstate to try to check to see where it was passable, where we rescued a Hispanic couple. They couldn't speak English, but they thought they were driving to Florida, and they had no idea of the hurricane. And when we got to them, the woman was 12 months pregnant. She wound up having a baby in a Katrina facility. And I think sometimes we've forgotten, as Big Duck, Jerome said, will remind you, when federal government didn't come in to help with the rescue, the young men who were jumping off the side of the interstate or swimming makeshift boats to go save people and bring them to the ramps for safety. And so there's so many stories. The stories about Mr. Ernest Jones, who's deceased now, who lived on Milan, who didn't leave, even though he was on unaccounted for a list, and his family sent us to look for him. We were doing search and rescue every day, launching from Willow and Napoleon. And when the boat went to his house, he said, "Y'all better identify yourselves." And he came to the window with a shotgun, and he said, "Yeah, tell my family I ain't leaving. I'm staying here to protect my neighbor's property and my neighborhood." Well, I'll never forget is the images of the bodies that were floating, and we didn't have a makeshift morgue. When they finally had a morgue, it was in St. Gabriel. It wasn't in New Orleans. And we were told to tie the bodies to a lamppost, or even the sores that stayed on my body for 2 months from going in and out of the water. And there's a whole list of untold stories and people, stories I never told before, because what I did was paying it forward from when I was rescued from Hurricane Betsy, from when me and my family lived in a shelter. So for me, we were just paying it forward.
And Councilman Thomas, if you don't mind, Councilman Thomas was actually on the back of a truck with us, rescuing people when we ran into the Hispanic couple. They were on interstate headed east. As you veer off the Chef exit, they were to the left, and they actually rode the storm out under that overpass because the winds got so bad. And when that young lady got out of the car, she was soon expecting. And Councilman Thomas and I think it was Wilbur Theodore, they brought that young lady and her husband to a hospital because she was on the verge of having a baby, and they got stuck in that storm, and they rode that storm out under the overpass at the Chef exit on I-10 going east.
And to the left of us, if you'll remember, the seniors who lived in that complex to the Gentilly side of the interstate.
Yes.
And how we had to come back and go back and forth to bring them to the dome, to the convention center. And I didn't know Chief Riley was on. I just heard, and if you remember, we had to stop at some point because we couldn't continue to pass because of the big tanker from the railroad that was blocking passage to the other part of it. We couldn't even pass. So the concentration was on how do we get those people in that Gentilly Pontchartrain neighborhood, how do we get them back to safety? And that was the effort then. And Chief Riley, you were right there with us.
Yes. And again, that speaks to the kind of leader Councilman Thomas has always been and continues to be, always there on the forefront, always helping, the citizens of New Orleans, and not just in his district, but throughout the city. And so, I do personally cherish his leadership, his support. And he's always an upfront, upstanding guy. And he was, like Chief Riley, out there with us. He wasn't standing on the sidelines. They were out there with us, actually, really working during that time. And I appreciate all the work that you did then, and I love and appreciate you now, and always will.
Well, I hate to even have to do this. I'm the kind of person I don't self-promote myself, so people like that can get looked over a lot. When the NFL and NFL mothers honored people for search and rescue and philanthropy, it was me and Tina Knowles at their conference in Dallas. I didn't wave that around and put it in a campaign commercial, because once again, I was a kid on top of the house during Betsy that was rescued, who lived in a shelter with their family till I moved in with our 11 kids. But the thing I want from this Katrina memorial, especially as we hit 20 years, is there's a whole lot of unsung heroes, right?
Right.
I know the politicians and the people who want notoriety are going to dominate, but I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't see them. And I'm not saying that to be angry or facetious, but I'm saying that to know that my brother died, and I know it had to be from going in and out of that mold and in and out of those houses. And for us to look at our bodies and have sores on our bodies for months, them little red spots on my little red ass, right? And I keep hearing so much stuff, and that's okay, right? Because we want to honor them. But I remember being in the room with the governor when all the White House wanted to talk about was $100 million no-bid contracts. Not the fact that our people were still underwater. Not the fact that the federal government hadn't really helped with the recovery, Chief Riley, until you remember when the 82nd Airborne and General Honore came in.
Yes.
We were on our own.
That's right.
On our own.
I remember y'all standing on the back of that truck, rolling down, because there was a camera. I think it was CBS at that time that was shooting you all. It was you, the councilman, I think the congressman, and the president on the back of that truck, rolling down, surveying.
Well, I remember coming down the back road when it was late at night, and people with infrared and M16s rolled up on us and said, "Where y'all going?" We glad they didn't shoot first.
Yep.
Period. I remember rolling up to the Johnson's house on General Pershing because their family couldn't account for them. Mr. Johnson was 90, Miss Johnson was 84, and they were stuck in the house. He had just had heart surgery a few months earlier. They were trying to get in the attic. We stopped them from getting in the attic. Most of the old people that had gotten in the attic, Chief Riley, you know what happened to them.
Yep.
Right.
Let me ask you something, Councilman, because I think this is very important to the times that we're living in right now. Because we're hearing a lot more, and I just saw you on the news, as a matter of fact, I think in the last couple of days, talking about these boil water advisories, especially you're talking about 3 of them in New Orleans East in the last week alone. And I know that, this is some difficulty that, has its own assessments of what may be and what has been. But do you think that all that water, all that weight from Hurricane Katrina, before the city was dewatered, sped up the usage and the wear and tear on the pipes and the systems that we're using for our water system? And shouldn't that have been replaced maybe even right after Hurricane Katrina? I'll let you walk in that water.
Gerard, as someone who studies the history of cities infrastructure, right? Absolutely, man. We had millions of gallons of water on top of our streets and our infrastructure, right? So, what would it not do? One drop of water over 1,000 years can put a hole through a boulder. So this city was with water for 43 days. On top of our streets, on top of our infrastructure. Now, that's an important discussion, and I mentioned it today, right? That people aren't having because we don't have enough people talking about the Katrina commemoration because, first of all, they weren't there, and they don't understand the intricate details, right? So the congressional hearing before Katrina said what? When the professors at LSU did the Hurricane Pam slosh model to predict what would happen if a certain level of hurricane came to the city, they said we would need $1 billion levee protection system, $1 billion. If a Category 3, 4, or 5, if you remember some of those debates, Chief Riley. Well, the congressional hearing said we would need $1 billion, but the Corps recommended $400 million less. Okay? So because they recommended $400 million less, 1,392 bodies and $160 million later, they would have saved $159 billion had they addressed the billion. Now, what's the other next important, right? And you ain't going to get this kind of conversation from nobody but me, unfortunately. So after that, right, what happened? We were negotiating with the czar of the recovery because of the Stafford Act at 67 cents on the dollar for stuff that wasn't going to be fully repaired and invested in to 5, 10, 15, or 20 years later because of the Stafford Act. And then to follow that up, the headline in the Times-Picayune, right after Katrina, when you started talking about road, home, and settlement, what did it say? It said the disbursement of the Katrina funds were discriminatory and unequally divided amongst affected communities. That's what the court said, but there was no remedy or reparation.
None. Correct.
Well, I just wanted to throw that
Zero.
out there about the water system. I know you can go deep into it, so I didn't mean to bring up your PTSD as well. So
No, man. Look, well, first of all, look, this is for me. I thought, folks, this was a sensitive time for me. I'm just leaving my brother's grave and my son's grave. I went to visit them and go during this time, right? And of course, Gerard, you know, a couple of days ago was the anniversary of my mother's death, right?
Yes.
So for me, there's a whole lot going through my head and my heart. And I'm listening to people, and I appreciate it, right? They're talking about you got a Katrina 20-year commemoration coming up, right? And there's going to be a whole lot of people don't know a damn thing about it. Nothing about it. They wasn't here like me and Chief Riley. They don't understand watching the body when the water went down, stay in the street and blow up to what it looked like was 300 or 400 pounds. Or the man on Newton Street over in Algiers who stayed in the middle of the street for a week. And guess what? I ain't getting no therapy. Chief Riley didn't get no therapy. Thousands of people didn't get no therapy. We just had to deal with it because we were left to deal with it.
Yeah. But look, I know that I got to get with them again, so I just want to take a minute to say to you, my condolences.
God bless y'all, man. I appreciate it.
On
Thank
the
you
loss
for listening.
of your family members, and I know that that's a hard thing for anybody. So we appreciate you much, and thank you for holding the line. There you go. And he hung up. So we got it. Let's get back to this with you two. Joining us now, we got Dr. Shepard in the building with us, and Doc, you two went to a Hurricane Katrina commemoration today too, right?
Yeah, so there was a press conference that was held with the Hip Hop Caucus and the Hurricane Katrina Commemoration Fund. And they did a really great job. There was a press conference. Oliver Thomas was there. Sonny Patterson was there. Mr. Green, who is a Lower Ninth Ward survivor, he's very outspoken about his story. He was there. Councilman Eugene Green was there. CES 45 was there and helped to put everything on and put the conference together. And they really did a great job of speaking to how important it is for us to be able to get together and remember and to have special times to commemorate what it was that took place. They went even further to push for a local or a state holiday so that people get a chance to be able to have workshops and discussions and do things that are productive around the holiday and the memory of Katrina. And they want to push it even further. They want to push the idea even further to get an official holiday started if it's possible. And so they held a press conference speaking about that. And they also then started talking about what it is that we need to do as a city to be able to move forward, and where it is that we would like to be able to see infrastructure being fixed, you know, our children being invested in better, the school system being invested in, and what it is that we need to do in order to be able to rally together to be able to move forward. Because the 20th anniversary of Katrina is coming up, and everyone is, a lot of people are already down here to get the story. And if they aren't, they will be, because everyone wants to put out something about the 20 years since Hurricane Katrina. So they stress the importance of us being able to tell our own stories, us being able to lead people.
Well, that's a good segue. That's a good segue.
That's a good segue?
Because there's a book that I just happen to know.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just happen to read
just
it.
happen to
Yeah, I
read
read it.
I
read it.
happen to
I
read
read it.
that
Pretty
same
good.
book.
What's the name of that book?
Good book.
As a matter of fact, I think I just saw somebody on television this morning talk about that book.
I wonder if we have someone here who could talk about the book.
I wonder.
You read about Inside the Eye?
Yeah.
Oh, that's, you know the book?
I've heard of it.
I heard the author once or twice.
You heard of it?
I heard
Yeah,
it
you heard of
once
it?
or twice.
Yeah. Chief, you ended up telling your own story.
I did, yes.
But folks, now because you know I'm gonna say it.
Mm-hmm.
Folks been telling you, write a book, man. Write the book.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't talk about it
Mm-hmm.
too much until somebody asks you something. But when they ask you something, it's like your whole deliverance changes. It's like you just went back into it again. And so a lot of folks were saying, you need to write a book. When you going to write a book? When did you start writing this book?
Well, the research actually started around 2007.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't start writing the book until 2019. So, as you know, when I retired from the police department, I was recruited by Homeland Security, FEMA.
So you were with how many different presidents?
Two different presidents.
Which were?
I was under President Barack Obama. Under President Barack Obama, I was appointed by the president. I ran 13 major disasters around this country.
Okay.
And I was the lead federal official. Under President Trump, I was 4. I had 4 major disasters where I was appointed by President Trump. And so a total of 17 disasters. And a lot of people don't know that under Hillary Clinton, when she was a Secretary of State, they contracted me. I was the lead law enforcement official in Haiti in 2010 when I retired, when that Haiti earthquake hit in Haiti. So I was the lead law enforcement official over there for a while over in Haiti. So the federal government recruited me after Hurricane Katrina. So for a total of 8 or 9 years through contracting work and as an executive with FEMA, I dealt with disasters around the country.
You already around the world.
Right.
I mean, it just wasn't around the country, it was actually around the world during that time.
And also, I sat on the floodplain management board for Czechoslovakia. I was on their board for floodplain management because in Czechoslovakia, they have flooding issues like we do. Right? But they have a phenomenal system because of the way their city is designed. They have portable walls that they put up. They're metal walls that they tuck and groove walls that they put up during certain seasons to prevent the cities. It's amazing the way they do it. I don't know if geographically we could do it here, but they do some amazing things in Czechoslovakia to prevent flooding.
Have we learned anything about the flooding? I mean, did we bring anything from with your experience over here?
Yeah, actually, at one point, General Creer, who was over the civil engineers here, who helped re-fortify the levees that we have, he was over there on one of the trips I was on. And so before Hurricane Katrina, those levees had what I'll describe as earthen dams. So earth support. It was mostly dirt and rock that supported those levees. So when Hurricane Katrina came, the force of that water went over the levees and dug a trench behind the levees, and those panels collapsed. Those big cement panels collapsed, right? There was no ship that went through, no boat went through and knocked down the levees or anything. That boat actually went through after the levees had collapsed. So now, with what General Creer did, they fortified those levees with concrete and steel. So when that water overtops now, it rolls down, it hits the concrete, and it rolls away. It no longer digs a trench where there was one dirt.
Because that's dirt.
Exactly. So I believe the levees are much, much better than they were. Can they withstand a Category 4 or 5? Only hopefully time will never tell.
But were you surprised for New Orleans to hear probably in the last month or two when they did the inspections of those pumps out at the lakefront for Lake Pontchartrain that they found corrosion? Because it made me ask the question: wait a minute, salt water makes corrosion for metal. Am I wrong or right? Because
I'm
I
not
don't
an
know.
engineer, so
right. I don't know, but I'm
don't
thinking
know.
to myself, that got to be salt water.
I'm not sure. What I do know, and then Mr. Fugate, who was the director of FEMA, who was under President Obama, and he and I had many conversations. I mean, New Orleans was given $2.3 billion for the infrastructure. Now, I never kept up. I don't know how much has been spent. I don't know what improvements have been made, but I know that the city got a lot of support from the federal government. I know that.
I was surprised that we even, because I know that one of the things that I politically could have talked to Mayor Nagin about was the fact that he automatically had capital projects and had a book of those capital projects, and he would always come and sit down and say, "Okay, here's the capital projects that we're talking about." As a matter of fact, one of my friends who was an advocate and still is an advocate for the Lower Ninth Ward, Vanessa Garinger, would always, I have to call Vanessa and tell her, come up to the office because Mayor Nagin and the team coming up here to discuss, here are the capital projects is going, because if I didn't call Vanessa, she was going to cuss me out on the air. I'm just waiting for her to come up there and say something. That's good because I know she online. Yeah, she cussed me out in the chat. But she also would come into the office and sit down and listen to those capital projects. But after Mayor Nagin was out of office, I was surprised to hear of the piping that was coming down St. Charles Avenue that ended up replacing all of those pipes on Napoleon and St. Charles. Because that area didn't really flood. All right, and then there were some
Crickets.
So part of that $2.3 billion ended up going into the areas of the city where it really did not flood. So that was, I'm just saying that. I wasn't trying to get you to comment.
Because I don't know what
That was under Mitch.
I know it was a small percentage that was spent, and this was the last numbers I had were probably 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know what has been done since then.
So let me ask you something, Chief Woodford. One of the issues that when you were out there in there, what parts of the city did you say, "Oh my God, look at this part of the city! Like I've never seen this before"? Maybe before they dewatered the city and after they dewatered the city. What did you see?
Of course, I was assigned to the 3rd District at that time, and the 3rd District encompasses parts of Lakeview, the lakefront, all those areas. And so in order, Canal Boulevard was like a river. I went to, about 2 weeks ago, I went to a restaurant on Harrison Avenue that after an event, after my son's ring ceremony, and I looked up at the roof because I remember being on a boat and only being able to see the roof of the steak knife.
Oh, wow.
That's how, and it was like that for a while. And I heard Councilman Thomas say about having to tie the bodies to a pole. And they had several houses that were on the lakefront, Lakeview area where you could see it was older people that the National Guard had tied those people to poles and stuff near their home, so they wouldn't float away and put a tag on them. So that was while the water was there. After, when I went to the Lower Ninth Ward, oh my God. I mean, it looked like somebody came in with a bulldozer and just leveled blocks and blocks of houses. It was unbelievable. Yeah, it was unreal. So before, and I saw some things while the water was still there, and definitely after the water receded. And I remember going. I couldn't get to my house for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and so when I did finally go, I remember by myself removing every piece of furniture and everything.
You did it by yourself?
I was that upset, I guess, and angry, and
So you trying to throw yourself? You trying to throw it back out?
I was a lot younger then. A lot younger then.
You
And,
trying to throw your back
I mean,
out?
I drug everything out to the curb and put it
By yourself?
by myself. My bed, everything, drug it out to the curb, and I sat after I got it all out. I sat on the curb and cried my heart out because
Wow.
I had purchased my house maybe like 2 years early, so it was fairly new, and I was like, I can't believe this. So that's a before and an after story when the water was there and when it receded. It was a tough time, and there were many days I was like, God, are we ever gonna come back?
So I'm gonna throw this question to both of you all, but I actually want you to start and I want you to finish up because you had to make the final decision. What made you stay? Because and the rest of that question is you had to deal with those that didn't stay, but that abandoned their posts.
Sure.
But what made you stay?
Leaving wasn't an option.
It was an option for some folks.
No, but it wasn't an option for me.
Right.
I took an oath. I knew what I was getting into when I joined the police department. I knew that it's a possibility when everybody had to leave, we had to stay. I knew that, and I've always wanted to serve my city, and that was the way I was doing it. And there was no way that I was gonna leave. There was no way I was gonna abandon my post. If I would have done that along with 200-300 people, where would we be?
Because altogether, if we think about it, how many? 500?
What?
Police officers
Abandoned?
That abandoned. How many?
No,
how many?
it wasn't
not
that many. We had hearings for 88 officers that we identified that abandoned the city, and we had more that we identified. Let me say that was 88 that was fired for abandoning the city, and that's because they were going more than 14 days, right? And then we had probably another 80 to 90 that received suspensions. So it depended on how long they were gone for. If we identified 4 days, 8 days, 12 days, and then if you were gone more than 14 days, you were terminated. So it was probably closer to 180 or 180 something. And Gerard, I'll never forget receiving phone calls when the phones came back on from other police departments, and they had called International Association of Chiefs of Police and Noble organizations that I was with, and they got my phone number. And I was getting calls from San Antonio, Texas, from Arkansas, from Memphis, from Atlanta. Other law enforcement agencies said, we just stopped an NOPD car with 4 people in it. Or we stopped an NOPD car with 6 people in it. Or we stopped. They were taking the cars as well and abandoning the city. So what we did is we asked them to take their credentials, take the car, and let them go. We would deal with them later. So all those people that went through that did that, we had hearings, and it wasn't just with NOPD staff. We brought 2 federal inspector generals in that sit and monitor those hearings and to ensure that it wasn't a biased situation, right? And so they were all terminated. And again, there was another 70 or 80 that received suspension days. And to be honest, we had other law enforcement agencies, Dallas, Atlanta, Memphis, that were actually down here recruiting 10 days after, offering police officers bonuses, free rent.
Oh, so
for
they're trying
6
to
months.
take the police officers.
Trying to take the police officers.
Wow.
So we had to
That's
deal
kind
with
of low
that.
down.
So, and
I didn't go. The furthest I went, and I have to give a shout out to the Louisiana State Police.
They tried to
Captain, our captain of the 3rd District at the time, drove the entire district out to Troop 8. It wasn't smiled upon, but when we got there, they had everything: socks, clothes, food. I mean, we hadn't had anything in a minute, and then we wound up actually after we got admonished a little bit. We actually stayed at the State Police Academy for a while, and we would come in from Baton Rouge every day and go to work. Yeah, that part.
One of the colonels from the state police called and said, do you know that you have about 40 or 50 officers from the 3rd District that are up here in Baton Rouge? I was like, what do you mean? They've been up here 2 days.
Yep.
We gave them clothes, they've showered, and I got the captain on the phone, and I won't tell you what I told him, but they were back in about 2.5 hours.
Yep.
So you were the boogeyman.
I wasn't a boogeyman. We had an obligation to the city
Right.
not to be in Baton Rouge. Everybody else was dirty.
Right.
Everybody else was dealing with it, and there was no reason for that commander to bring. Some of his officers refused to leave.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them refused to leave. So we weren't. Listen, I lived in Algiers. My house wasn't messed up. You know, I did go home and I took a shower, but I put my same dirty uniform back on, right? I wasn't going to come out fresh and clean. And we have people that have been in the same uniforms for 5 days.
It's called leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. I took my uniforms, took the stripes, the bars, whatever, and gave them to people who homes were destroyed, so they would have clothes to wear.
Right.
So we didn't have an obligation to. How do we justify that? We just couldn't.
Well, we were,
He was the boogeyman.
like I said at that time, we were.
But look, it was 5 days before I even went to my house.
Right.
Before I even took a shower, and I mean, my house had a little damage, but it was, we had no power or light. But and we were taking a risk because they said the water wasn't potable.
Right.
EPA said do not bathe in it.
Yep.
But you were taking a risk when you even bathed in it.
Yeah.
All right. I tell you what we'll do. We'll take the break. We'll take the break here. We'll come back. I know Doc's got a question too, and we'll take some telephone calls. 504-582-9422. As we also want to send a shout out to another former chief, Chief Eddie Campas, who was also a part of the recovery for the city. More coming up, y'all. Everybody hold tight.
It's Off the Top with Norman Robinson on WBOK 1230 AM.
With the presidential election on the horizon in November, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Does your vote actually count? I raise the question for those who choose to sit on their behind and whine rather than exercise their constitutional right to vote. The late civil rights leader and Congressman John Lewis in 2020, in a message directed to African Americans, stated, "The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed you can lose it." Congressman Lewis and a litany of African Americans, men, women, and children, risked life and limb in the fight to gain voting rights for Black Americans. A right, by the way, that was only granted to African Americans 59 years ago. I was 13 years old in March of 1965 as I watched Hosea Williams of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and John Lewis of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee organize a march for voting rights in the state of Alabama. 600 marchers were stopped at the infamous Edmund Pettus Bridge outside Selma by Alabama law enforcement officers and brutally beaten and bloodied in an attack that would go down in history as Bloody Sunday. Viewers who witnessed the attack were outraged. After a federal judge intervened, 300 marchers joined a second walk from Selma to Montgomery. Their powerful commitment aided the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, 5 months later, passed by Congress and signed by then-President Lyndon Johnson. But here we are, 59 years later, folks, and the fight continues. In 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court reversed part of the Voting Rights Act, effectively removing federal oversight of state and local voting laws. Since then, several states have now enacted more restrictive and discriminatory voter laws, which include practices like strict photo ID requirements, reduced early voting, the elimination of same-day registration, and annual voter registration drives, and more. And yet I still hear these stupid conversations among some African Americans who decry that your vote doesn't count. I ask you, if that were the case, why are they trying so hard to keep you away from the ballot box? Your ancestors wanted the right to vote because it is the basis for democracy. When people have the right to vote, they are able to push the government to do things that benefit those people. So don't sit on your rusty, dusty behind and whine. Go vote, damn it. This is Norman Robinson off the top.
Start your day off right.
Just getting your day started.
Early morning gospel on WBOK 1230 AM.
A message from the community scientist. Do you live or work in St. James, St. John, St. Charles, Ascension, Calcasieu, Baton Rouge, or St. Bernard parishes? If so, it's important for you to understand objective information about 1,3-butadiene, volatile organic compounds, methane, and mercury, and how they impact your health and the natural environment. The Community Scientist is a service program of Rise St. James. Learn more at risestjames.org.
Visit DePaul's new Algiers Health Center at 2801 General de Gaulle Drive to receive primary and preventive care for both adults and children. Services also include behavioral health, imaging, and on-site pharmacy, vision, Medicaid enrollment assistance, and more. For appointments, visit DePaulCommunityHealthCenters.org or call 504-207-3060.
The Reality Check on WBOK 1230 AM.
All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. Conversation at 504-582-9422. And I think there is another Mr. Woodfork on the phone here. You know this man?
Of course I do.
Mr. Woodfork.
Oh, yes, sir.
How you doing?
Doing great.
Good. We can
Well,
barely
oh,
hear you.
man.
I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Got you.
Okay. Doing great for an old man, I said.
Oh, I don't know about that old man, but I know you're doing great.
Well, I know my daughter's probably going to be a little bit embarrassed, but she's my hero, my shero. She's always been my shero. She's always done the right thing for the right reasons. And I was out of the city. I didn't want to leave, but the day before the storm hit, my wife talked me into leaving, and I wound up in Opelousas where my grandparents lived. And and I spoke. My brother, rest his soul in peace. He stayed, and I was very worried about him when I heard the city was flooded because I had spoken with him, and he said everything is okay. And then we saw the stuff on the TV started happening, and I couldn't talk to anybody anymore. Couldn't talk to my daughter. Next time I saw was at the State Police Barracks in Baton Rouge. And one thing I'm very proud of, me and my wife taught both my daughters to swim when they were babies. We brought them to the Lehman playground, and I threw them in the pool. They both went to the bottom of the pool, and they both came back up, and they've been swimming ever since. So she wasn't afraid of the water. And she's not very tall, but she told me that when she came out of the building where she was at, the dental building, she was to get into a boat with another young man that I'm very proud of, Ricky Jackson, who passed away. He saved a lot of people.
Yep, he did.
And she was up to her neck when she came out of that building, but she never quit, and she never stopped fighting for the people in the city.
Thank you, Daddy.
Yes,
You're welcome.
indeed. Yes, indeed. I've learned something from the both of y'all.
What's that?
I cannot make reference to you, Mr. Woodfork, unless I be saying to, how your wife doing?
She's doing great.
Yeah, you
Probably
make sure
listening right
that you
now.
let her know that I asked.
Hey, Mom. I know you're listening.
Yeah,
And you say we never talk about you.
There it is right
Hi,
there.
Mom. I call her, that's my mom's name is Tina, but I call her Sweet Tea. Hey, Mama.
Hey, Sweet Tea. Sweet Tea, Miss T. There we go. Mr. Woodfork, always good, my friend. I appreciate the call.
Thank you, man.
All right, talk
Thank
to you
you,
later.
Warren. Appreciate you, man.
Oh, thank you.
Your dad, I know we got to go to break here, but your dad, making sure we give him his props, one of the best DEA agents for years.
Yep, he
So,
did some good work.
That is good. All right, we got news coming up. We're going to come back because we got to talk about some other stuff that happened during Hurricane Katrina. And, Doc, I know you got a question, too. I ain't trying to put you off here. I just want to make sure we get past this, all right? News is next, and we'll come back and have some more conversation next, right here on WBOK.
You have
Schools for New Orleans.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. With school starting next week in New York City, officials say all families who requested a pre-K seat on time have been offered one. Mayor Eric Adams says more than 1,500 additional 3K seats were added in high-demand areas to fulfill all requests made. There were more than 43,000 3K applications for this school year, more than triple the number compared to 5 years ago. Meanwhile, Mayor Adams, who is Black, says hundreds of special education pre-K seats have been added, reducing waitlist time. South Suburban Thornton, Illinois Township Supervisor and embattled Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard is addressing the public. She spoke Wednesday night despite canceling a special meeting of Thornton Township trustees. Henyard, who was Black, slammed recent actions by trustees to limit spending and enact a new credit card policy, claiming the moves have halted township services. The South Suburban leader has been under scrutiny following controversies, including allegations of corruption and multiple investigations by local and federal agencies. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
New Schools for New Orleans wants to welcome all of our teachers, school leaders, students, and families back for the 24-25 school year. In addition, we want to send a big shout out to our education community for all of their hard work this past school year. Orleans Parish improved students' learning mastery plus by 2 percentage points since last school year. Also, New Orleans Public Schools grew 3 percentage points in the areas of English language arts and math in all grade levels. Let's continue to make more academic gains this school year.
All right, folks, welcome back. We're here inside of the studio having a conversation about Hurricane Katrina. We are commemorating 19 years since Hurricane Katrina and just giving some more information about what took place inside of the city. We are here with two very important chiefs, and not your Mardi Gras Indian chiefs, but the chiefs of police. Okay, Chief Warren Riley and Chief Michelle Woodfork. And so we were just inside the midst of talking about, first responders, the people who helped and made sure that they rescued people and did what should be done. Chief, you said that you went even further than giving somebody the clothes off your back. Mm-hmm. You re-wore clothes and gave people all of the stuff from out of your closet to be able to make sure people had clothes. So, but at the same time, you said you had some police that were abandoning posts. Mm-hmm. Could you talk a little bit more about the police officers who were doing other types of crime? How did you find out about it? And, we've all heard maybe some horror stories about police misconduct. Mm-hmm. Could you speak a little bit more toward that?
Well, there are a lot of things that were rumors. Some of them obviously were factual, and I won't get into those things that have already been adjudicated. Obviously, it was all over the news. But, one of the shocking things was the morning after the storm. It was St. Charles Parish Police. They came down in a van. It's maybe it's 18 hours after the storm rolled out, and they were parked by the convention center, and one of their majors pulled me to the side, said, "Chief, I don't know how to tell you this." I was like, "What is it?" He said, "I saw NOPD officers breaking into a jewelry store." Right? And we looked into it. Let me just say that there were some Rolex watches that shouldn't have been out there, right? Some of those, but we never were able to totally identify who they were. So that was a major, major embarrassment. On the other side, NOPD has never gotten credit. You had so many tactical officers. You had so many officers who were boaters and fishermen who used their own boats, who went out there and saved lives and did all sorts of heroic things that have never been presented. So we had our bad, right? We had that. Hopefully, it's less than 10% that were doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. But the vast majority of those men and women were phenomenal and stood up way above. It's called situational leadership. You don't know who's going to rise and who's going to fall in a critical situation. So some people don't even know they have that within them, the capacity to be a leader, right? To do heroic things. It just happens. And then some of those who beat their chests don't have that ability when stuff hits the fan. So you don't know who's going to do what. So your question as to some of those that did some things that were wrong, certainly there were some that have never been accounted for, right? But the vast majority I would say 80% of the men and women of NOPD did the right thing, did some heroic things that have never been captured, right? Some of them obviously got stressed to a point where they couldn't take it. They ended their own lives. So we were hit with, we had a police officer, Kevin Thomas, that was shot in the head on the West Bank while trying to stop people from robbing a gas station, right? And Kevin, fortunately, and I went to that scene, he'd already been rushed to West Jefferson Hospital, and he fortunately survived that. And then it was actually 3 JP deputies who caught those same 3 subjects with guns about 4 blocks away. Our radio system had went down. Some kind of way, JP did get it, and JP officers captured those guys within an hour and a half, 2 hours. They were captured. I think they were all convicted for that. And then Officer Kevin Thomas, fortunately, has fully recovered. I interviewed him for this when I wrote my book, and he has fully recovered, but it was very close. He was shot in the head at point-blank range, but he fortunately survived. So there are many more heroes than those that didn't do what they should have done.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you a question to, I guess, start to bring us into today, living with the memory of Hurricane Katrina today. Do you think that from your professional standpoint, being someone who worked for FEMA, do you believe that we are prepared for another possible major disaster? And what is it that you think that we may need to help us to truly be where we should?
Well,
if you believe we're behind.
First and foremost, hopefully the levees, and I believe in General Creer that those levees have been fortified to where they won't breach again. But there's still unforeseen things that can happen depending on which way this hurricane come and what the might of it, the strength of it is. So is the city of New Orleans and their first responders ready? I have no way of knowing that. I have no way. I don't know what their preparation is. I don't know. I know the personnel. If we struggle with 1,600 police officers and now you only have 800, it's going to be very difficult if we have a massive event like that for them to be totally prepared. They're going to clearly need assistance from around the state and from the federal government. Now, the positive thing about Katrina is that because of that, there's something called PROCEMBR, which is the Post-Katrina Emergency Reform Act. Everything that went wrong has been addressed by the federal government. So prior to Katrina, the federal government didn't have 10 locations around this country regionally where they have rescue teams, rescue boats, trucks of food, trucks of water, stuff that they can get in within 72 hours, right? And they have tons of it, and it's stationed around this country. So getting that equipment in. But what people have to realize is when you're a first responder and they tell you to prepare for 72 hours, it means that rescuers are going to get here in 72 hours. They're not going to be able to get to everybody in 72 hours. They may get here in 72 hours, but you may be on that roof 4 or 5 days. So imagine if you have a Category 3 coming in or a strong Category 2, and you can afford to, and that's one of the problems a lot of people can't afford to. Why not go 100 miles out, get a hotel for a night? If it's only a Category 3, you're going to come back, you're going to clean up, you're going to move on. The lights will be on in 3 or 4 days, and you move on with your life, right? But if you stay, and it moves from a 3 to a 4 or a 4 to a 5, and you're stuck in your attic for 5, 6, 7, 8 days, is it worth not leaving?
Right.
So when it has the potential, and if it's a strong Category 2, and it's July or August, and the water temperatures are really high, within 24 hours it could be a 4.
And I think, along the lines of what Chief Riley is saying, Katrina should be a reminder for us about preparedness. And I'm not just saying from a law enforcement standpoint. I'm talking about everybody in the city, everybody who lives here should be prepared, whether it's financially, whether do you have somewhere to evacuate, to be prepared for that. Because, just like in the book, we dismissed them for so long. We had so many that were hit or miss that was coming our way but took a turn. Was coming directly at us but took a turn. So were we prepared for Katrina? No. We weren't. We weren't not prepared for that type of catastrophic damage. Today, and just leaving the NOPD about 4 or 5 months ago now, the plans there, the hurricane preparedness, the strategies that are used during those times are a whole lot different, a whole lot better, more prepared. They have where we didn't have them before. We had rally points, I think, if I can remember correctly, back in 2005. But now we have alternative shelters. If we're at the district station and it gets too bad, there's another location that each and every district has to go or is instructed to go. It's in a plan. So the planning is a whole lot better. It even 2 or 3 days out. You have people, if they have to get a sick parent or a disabled parent or their kids or relocated somewhere, there are plans put in place where those people are allowed to help relocate their family members and pets and different things like that, and then come back and be allowed to come back in and work whatever major event we have, whether it's a hurricane, tornado, whatever weather event is coming that way. So I think they are better prepared today. As for, I don't think anybody could be ready for a Cat 5 or what happened. That kind of weather event. You just have to do the best that you can do, learn from the mistakes of the past, and just have good leadership in place. And Chief Riley doesn't remember this either. When they did get those cruise ships. I don't sleep a lot at night. Never have. Still don't. So I get up at night, and we're on the boat at night, and I would go up and get some iced tea from on the Lido deck all the time, and I would always see him sitting down writing in a black journal. And so he doesn't know this, but I carried that with me as a superintendent. Because I asked him, I'm like, what are you writing every night? Every time when I come up here, I always see you writing. And he was writing everything that had happened that day in his journal, and it gave him a guide where if something he couldn't remember or something came to mind, and he could go back to those notes to maybe fix something or remember something important that he needed to know. And so when I was appointed as a superintendent, my very first thing was to get my journal and every day write down everything that happened, in real time as I was going. And I think I have about 4 of those little black books from last year or whatever. So it was, good leadership during that time. And we learned from those things. And I think the department and the city is better because of all the mistakes and lessons learned from Hurricane Katrina and some other weather events that we've had.
I do have a question about that too, and I'm gonna ask both of you. Are we prepared now?
I have no idea how the city functions. I have no idea.
I can only give you my assessment from
your time.
from the NOPD. Yes, a lot of things that we did not do and probably should have done had we known better back then in 2005. They were changed, and it was because of that. And even after in the aftermath, and Chief Riley was still the chief at that time, they began way back in 2005, 2006, preparing differently for hurricanes, more equipment, a better strategy, doing things a little different, putting the hurricane preparedness plan together. Each and every district had their own little small plan to know what to do in that particular area and different things. So I think now they're better prepared. Again.
Well, one of the things you did too was which we have not talked about, it was the fact that even though we're a city that's surrounded by water, did we have enough boats?
No, when Hurricane Katrina hit, we had one boat. We had one boat. We had one, well, actually we had 2 boats. SOD had a Zodiac boat, and then we had a flat boat that could seat maybe 4 people.
But didn't you secure more boats after that for each district?
Through FEMA, we bought 31 boats, which they still have. So we bought 31 boats. I think, I can't remember the numbers, but it was 5 or 6 Zodiac rescue boats, some mid-sized boats, a couple of larger boats. But we were well prepared when I left. I'm assuming they still have that stuff.
Well, not to give away too much of your book, but your book really outlines all of the decisions that you had to make because people were not prepared, but you had to get people rescued. You had to get people to a certain level. And I really appreciate that about your book, is that it goes basically through your line of thinking, right? And even the things that we did see that was like, you had a boat or y'all had the military vehicles. Those were all preparations that you did beforehand. And it really made me shudder to think, what if you had not, you know, grabbed the handbook, read up on it beforehand and really prepared, right? So I just want to say, we have evidence of your good thinking through a difficult time. And to go back to what you said, Chief Woodfork, I understand now what you're saying is that the New Orleans Police Department is in a much better space to be able to react if something like that happens again.
Absolutely. Those plans are revisited every year. The hurricane plan is revisited every year. All the hurricane forms are updated every year so that when something, or if something, well, I better say when, because it will happen, something like that happens again, they are better prepared to stay in the city, to prevent any looting, anything like that from going on. All those things, all those strategies are already in place in those hurricane plans. They're just reviewed and updated every year, just in case things change. There may be something that changed that prompts them to change those hurricane preparedness plans. But I think right now, I think they're prepared as far as equipment. Talk about manpower. It is a little, that is going to be challenging. But like I said last year, we did a lot more with less. It's all about strategic planning. It's all about putting people in places where they thrive. It's all about putting good leadership in place and having great management skills. And so I think just like bringing violent crime down last year, of course we didn't have 1,600 or 1,500 officers. We had maybe 900. But through a strategic plan that I put in place, we got crime down 25%, violent crime down 25%, and it continues. I'm so proud of the New Orleans Police Department. And the new superintendent, Kirkpatrick, was so graciously, again, kept the same plan that I put in place as interim superintendent, and it is paying dividends. I know she's adding her own twist to it. They're studying how the ceasefire model works, and they may go to make that an addition to go to ceasefire. But they're doing such an amazing job, and I think, again, good management, good leadership skills, where you can get your people to follow you and get things done and brought that crime down and get those hurricane plans in effect. That's what it takes. Great leadership and good management skills and a great group of people and the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department.
Two quick things. One about Chief Woodfork. I mean, when Chief Woodfork took over, I think in 23, was it 22 and 23, or 23 and a part of 24, people forget that we had 30 people shot or killed on the interstate. It's just the interstate in New Orleans in an 18-month period, right?
You're right.
Chief Woodfork, I think she partnered with the state police and DPS, and they have these officers on the interstate, and I don't believe there's been one shooting in the last year and a half, and that was at an epidemic pace. So definitely would like to compliment Chief Woodfork on that. Yes. But as it relates to emergency preparedness, if a Category 4 comes in here, it doesn't matter what preparations you have.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't matter. It's going to be all about recovery. It's going to be all about recovery and rescue.
Okay,
and that's all.
That brings a different question to my mind then. So, maybe it's just a dual question. I'm gonna just throw it out there. But do you feel as though the general public is prepared for because I mean, we don't have boats, right? I don't think a lot of people have, like you say, you need management skills and this and this. Like, a lot of people don't have all of the resources within the household. Do you think that and some don't know how to swim. So do you think that the general public, the majority, don't know how to swim?
In a hurricane, but go ahead.
Is that because you can't swim that well? Because that's what you said in your book.
I can't swim that well. That's why I leave. That's why I leave.
So do you think that the general public is prepared for if something else takes place?
I think because we haven't had anything really, really major like that type of water event, wind event, that real, of course, Ida happened and we lost power for a very long time. So that made it, a horrible thing. But like a Katrina, I think we've gotten a little complacent because we haven't had that. We got to leave out of here for a month and can't come back because we don't have this and we don't have that. So I think it's going to be incumbent upon the leadership to maybe go back at it, and around May 1st, June 1st, to start talking about preparedness again. And I know they do. They put out a lot of messages. I had to give them.
Well, the bottom line is, does the city or the state have plans in place? You have an indigent population here. You have a low-income population
That's
here.
true.
Doesn't have the ability to drive out.
That's
They
true.
don't have money for hotels. They
That's
don't
correct.
have relatives out of town. Those are the folks that will be stuck here.
That's
Those
right.
are the folks that will suffer. So when you talk about being prepared, what do you have in place for those people who don't have the finances or the ability to get out? Those are the people that you will have to come back that will rescue. Some will die because they don't have the ability. So when you ask if any city is ready, are they ready to deal with their low-income population who doesn't have the resources? And that should be
That's
your
a governmental
priority.
problem. Yep, it is. It
Okay,
should be.
we have to go to break. It raises a question in my mind, though, about if we're also prepared for if we have to do recovery, right? What has our recovery process look like? And is there a way to make that more efficient? Okay, I'll leave that on your mind. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Late nights are made for chillin', and you can do just that every Sunday night at 10 p.m. as DJ Wick brings you The Love Zone. It's the perfect way to top off your weekend with your favorite old and new school ballads. So sit back, relax, and let DJ Wick take you to the Love Zone on WBOK 1230 a.m. and on the World Wide Web at WBOK1230.com.
The New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation is the nonprofit organization that owns the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival presented by Shell. With the funds generated from Jazz Fest, the foundation invests in Louisiana communities through economic development, cultural enrichment, and free educational programs. To learn more about the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation, please visit us at www.jazzandheritage.org.
Visit DePaul's new Algiers Health Center at 2801 General de Gaulle Drive to receive primary and preventive care for both adults and children. Services also include behavioral health, imaging, an on-site pharmacy, vision, Medicaid enrollment assistance, and more. For appointments, visit DePaulCommunityHealthCenters.org or call 504-207-3060.
Hey y'all, it's Chef Bunny, and I'm the host of The Roo, where we will be discussing all things food and NOLA. You can catch me live on air Thursdays at 12:30 p.m., so check out what we'll be cooking up on WBOK 12:30 a.m.
Making a difference in the community. WBOK 1230 AM.
All right, folks, we are back. We are back. Don't forget, at 4 o'clock today, we've got the sports report. Our guest in studio with us having some conversation. We definitely are happy that they are here. Former Chief Warren Riley from the NOPD, and, of course, Chief Woodford from NOPD, too, in studio with us. Earlier, we heard from Mayor Nagin. Chief Woodford, I know he's still listening because this has been interesting conversation, too. But leadership. You're really talking about leadership. When he was in that position, I know that he would have more conversation with Warren because that was his police chief. But Warren said he was there on the ground with you guys, making sure that you all saw him on the ground with you. Can you remember any of those instances that okay, the mayor's still here. We're getting ready to do this and do this and do this. And what did your daily routine look like? Because you said at that point in time you maybe a sergeant?
Yeah.
Sergeant?
He absolutely was there. I remember several times where we were just standing out on the street after doing some patrols and stuff, and then he would, pull up and just start talking, and is everybody okay? Just checking on folks. And then checking on folks who were still there in the city, who weren't the police, who managed to stay in the city and survive. Survive the whole event.
Right.
And so always present, always there, always making sure that the NOPD and all the first responders had what they needed. You always had some message. If you didn't see him, you had some message from him through Chief Riley. About what the mayor said, or what the mayor wants to do, or what the mayor is attempting to do to get things back on track, to get you guys housing, to get it whatever it is that you need. And so the leadership was like, no. And then you did feel like he was fighting for you.
Mm-hmm.
You did feel like he was speaking up, not just for first responders, but for everyone. He was speaking up for those people who were stuck on those roofs or who did not have a way out of the city. So I think the leadership at that time was smart. It was stellar. And I think for a catastrophe of that magnitude, that they handled it very, very well.
One of the
and
things
I'm
too
grateful
with
for that.
I think that we had an issue with how perception could also demean what was going on. So that perception of some of the cases, and Chief Riley, you might want to say something about this too, because you saw it. I think you brought it up earlier. Well, was the fact that you would see articles, and those articles of maybe a Caucasian person that was stuck in that water. It was an article that would say, look, little Johnny and Betsy over there fighting to go get some food to feed their families. But then you would see an article with maybe someone black doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And they ended up being demonized, I would say that would be a good word to use, as looters. And it made me ask the question, well, what's the difference between the two? How did that become? Because I never forget, as I'm watching television, that the demonization of the African Americans during that time wasn't just the difference between somebody trying to survive and looters. It was also being called, what were we being called at the time? We were being called refugees. Mm-hmm. And it took somebody out of Washington, D.C. to do a press conference. I think that was John Lewis to do a press conference, and he wasn't even on the ground at that time to do a press conference and let them know that stop calling us refugees. Because if you know the difference, and if you knew the meaning of refugees, you would know that a refugee is a person that doesn't have a country.
These were highly educated. These were highly educated news folks from around the country and some national stations that were referring to our citizens in other cities as refugees, which was horrible. And I remember the first time I talked to my daughter, it was maybe 10, 11 days later. And I guess at the time she was 15 or 16. She was in Houston. And she's like, Daddy, they're calling us refugees. That's the first time I heard. Because, we didn't have television. We didn't have anything for those first 8 or 9 days. And that's the first time I heard that. And so she was offended. So as it relates to people stealing, what you just mentioned, I mean, I can only give you my perspective. And those folks who were taking food, it wasn't a problem. But we saw people taking stereos and big screen TVs and things like that. Those were looters.
Right.
Those were looters. So as it relates,
where they gonna plug it in at?
It was the craziest thing that you'd ever, So, but the officers knew if people had food, if they had even medicine, let them go. Let them go. So, and then we had nowhere to bring any arrests. The sheriff, the jail was down. Right. So we set up a temporary jail at Greyhound bus station after about 10 or 12, maybe 14 days, where all we were doing was handcuffing people to a fence. Oh, wow. And then we had New York Department of Corrections that came in to assist us, right? And the prison had its own issues because they had prisoners that were in there 10, 12 days later, right, that had no food or water. So that what you just mentioned about white and black, I personally didn't see that. I either saw people that were taking things that they needed or people who were taking things that they didn't need, such as television.
And
things
Chief
like
Riley
that.
can attest to this. It was very dangerous. It was the time it was very dangerous as far as looting was concerned. We remember having our whole district having to go to the Riverwalk to stop. They had, they were looting everything in there, and we could understand if you didn't have any clothes or again or food, but he's exactly right. The things they were taking, but there was no power in there, right? And so we were dressed in battle dress uniforms, so it was dark, and you saw it. There were times it was very dangerous because you didn't know who was who, but we were trying to stop, that looting. So those are very serious and dangerous times too. When you talk about somebody looting or versus somebody trying to get something to eat.
How do you make that saying, okay, cool, you just need something to eat? How did you make the choice between the two? Because you're saying that you had to take people and take them down
you
to
knew.
the
You knew it. You knew
Food was never an issue, but
right.
Well, let me not say it wasn't. As it relates to people going in to get food
right.
and looting, that was never an issue. But there came a point after about 6-7 days, there was no food.
Right. There was nothing
to take. There was nothing really to take. Right. Our officers were trying to find. I mean, they were cooking red beans and soups and all. They were makeshift cooks. You know, and that's all we had for the first few days. They say bring 3 days of supplies. Well, you bring a couple of sandwiches, whatever. We didn't. I probably lost 18 pounds. Because we literally had a little bit of water, and then we ran out of water.
Yep.
So, and then they were saying you can't drink the faucet water because it wasn't potable, and EPA was saying it was dangerous. So these were super challenging times that we were fortunate enough to get through. But any cop with common sense had to make a reasonable decision about what was looting and what wasn't. And so we're fortunate that it didn't get worse and that there wasn't more things that caused officers to do foolish things. So, I mean, it was a horrible, horrible time. And people have forgotten, but as we continue to talk, more and more things come to mind. And it was a horrible, horrible time, not only for law enforcement and first responders, but for the citizens in New Orleans. They were finding bodies in attics 6 months and 2 years later. Skeletal remains, right? So, I mean, it's one of America's greatest disasters, clearly.
As you said, things start to come to mind. I was just speaking with someone the other day about what took place with the militias in Algiers Point and how they were shooting black men who were back there as well. So
they weren't militia; they were thugs. They were thugs. They were. In Algiers Point. There was, I forgot the guy's name. He did ultimately get convicted. In a certain part of Algiers Point, you had a group of white, I guess they were supremacists that blocked off streets with their trucks and their cars. They all had shotguns and pistols, and they did not want anybody that was not white to come through their community. And I remember we were giving a briefing, maybe this is the 5th or 6th day at the Riverwalk, and 2 young officers from the 4th District came up to me and pulled me aside and said, "Chief, so 2 black guys just said they were shot at by these white guys." So the officers went over. They saw the trucks. They saw the guys with the automatic weapons. They saw it like it was an outpost. Then we later found a couple of bodies, right? The National Guard found these bodies on Algiers Point, where they had been shot. And they were just people trying to get to the to the ferry because they heard that the National Guard had food at the levee. And these individuals didn't want them coming through their neighborhood. So they shot at a few people. And the accurate count will never be known because when the bodies were recovered, the National Guard came out, they put them in body bags, they brought them to the coroner's office. So some of the locations were identified, some were not. But that gentleman, I think his name was Bourgeois, forgive me if I'm wrong, he went to jail for it. And it shouldn't have, he did die in prison, but it shouldn't have just been him. And it was one of his family members who actually contacted the authorities. But when those 2 young officers told me about it, it was actually James Bernazani and another DA that was at our briefing, and I told them about it, and they said they would look into it, right? Well, 5-6 years later, here, this guy gets convicted, for that very same thing. But it was proven that he did it. I don't think everybody responsible went to jail, but they did get the leader of that group.
I think it goes to show how emergencies and disaster can bring out the worst in people, especially because it wasn't just
this one person. He wound up finding other people to also hold the line with him, that racial line with him, and to enact violence. It's the kind of thing that makes me start thinking about January 6th and other kinds of like armed vigilantes that could come together. You think I'm going too far? Well, I just think about it as we start to head into thinking about if disaster strikes again, what is it that takes place? We see that people will come together and patrol their communities. Well, do we have people who could come together and make sure that they control their communities, make sure that we have what it is that we need in the moment of disaster? You think that's too far? I don't think that's too far. You're welcome. That's what I'm here for. Okay, do we have to go in for break? No, we don't have to go in for break. Okay, so then that makes me go into my other question. My other question was, so if a disaster does strike again, and you said the thing that would be most important if there's a extremely large-scale disaster is the ability to come back and to repair everything.
Yeah, recovery.
And recover. Do you think that we are at a point where we could recover from something? I was at the Hip Hop Caucus press conference earlier with Representative Knox, and someone said, well, we're still recovering from Katrina.
We are.
I'll probably say it's 19 years later.
Right.
It's 19 years later. $2.3 billion, and we're still recovering. That doesn't add up. And I'll just leave it at that. So when the next one happens, I don't understand why we're not more advanced than we are, and when you were provided $2.3 billion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still areas of the city that are not fully rebuilt. Lower Ninth Ward,
right?
Still,
And
to me,
some of those areas, the Lower Ninth Ward, New Orleans East, some of those
That's
areas
right.
that were hit hard, Gentilly, I would imagine that those were the areas that should have been prioritized first.
Correct.
Right? And that wasn't the case. So I don't know what other political things that may have prohibited that, but I know out of the director of FEMA, I'm on a disaster. He visited me at this disaster, and he told me about the $2.3 billion that was put in place that I won't say everything else he said, but that the city of New Orleans received.
Tell us what he said when we go on break. I want you to tell me what that's all about. But it almost feels as though what I'm hearing then is that, and I think that WBOK listeners are used to hearing this, but there has been a lot of money spent. There is more money that could be spent, and yet we still don't see the types of progress. I mean, regular progress, the things that you would think, every time that it rains, it floods.
Well, I think this is what he's saying is that he knows someone told him that the money was given to the city, but he doesn't quite know.
Wait, no, and because listen.
He's going to tell us on the break.
When it comes to FEMA money, there's FEMA money goes to the state.
Right.
So that money comes from FEMA through the state. City has to get it from the state, or the parish has to get it from the state. It's all managed through project assistants, employees who do project worksheets. All of that stuff is accounted for. So by no means am I alluding to something corrupt with the money. It's just why hasn't it been allocated and these things been done? This is not a situation where anybody you can't steal FEMA money. It doesn't work like that. Right? So it's not about that. It's about getting the work done.
Right. So it's a form of mismanagement.
Absolutely.
Mismanaging funds. He doesn't have to say it. He's going to tell me on commercial break in my ear over here. Okay.
So I do have a question. One of the questions, too, is as we started assessing and looking at the different areas of the city, the folks from FEMA, and this is one person that we have not brought up in this entire conversation, and that is Ed Blakely. Were you out there with him when he went on his bicycle tour, or having to go through the areas of the city to say, this is what we need to start working on? And how did that work? Because I think he was really misunderstood in how he wanted to try to put things in order as the czar for the reconstruction of New Orleans.
I did get to know Ed Blakely. I think he was a very gracious, intelligent, very competent person. Listen, why things didn't go the way they should have, I have no idea. And I can safely say that's all I'm going to say.
That's it?
That's all.
That's all I'm going to say.
That's all.
That's what you safely going to say?
Safely going to say. Safely going to say.
He'll tell us the rest.
So I saw Ed Blakely. As a matter of fact, I did some research on Ed Blakely and some of the places where he ended up, because of course we know he did the San Francisco earthquakes and other places. But one of the things he said, which I think the media took out of context, was the fact that he did it, and we're going to have cranes in the air, and everybody started going on that. But if we start looking at how many years of disaster, because you learned this as well working with FEMA, disasters don't happen overnight. Refixing them, some of those disasters have been 15, 20, 25 years. Was that, and I'm asking you this from your professional opinion, was that misconstrued? And I don't want to say by Ed Blakely, should have been told to the folks that, hey, this is going to take years to refix.
All I would say is in my recent travels to Las Vegas, Atlanta, and Houston,
You're not
I
gonna
see
get him to
highways
say
and cranes being in the sky, highways being constructed. I see a lot of things going on.
And that's his answer. He's sticking to
And
it.
that's safely your answer? Was it misconstrued?
He answered that.
think you mispronounced
Asked
that,
and
but
answered.
I'm gonna let it go.
Misconstrued. Misconstrued.
Asked and answered.
Where's
That's a
your
word
mind?
that I made up.
What's on your mind?
No, asked and answered.
So was that the answer?
I'm done with that question. Yeah.
Asked and answered.
He implied other things.
Asked and answered.
The implementation of how things are supposed to work as far as putting together from a FEMA standpoint, is that supposed to be discussed with the folks to be able to say, hey,
I have no idea how the city of New Orleans conducts
No,
business.
I'm just saying for
I
with
don't have a
FEMA.
clue. I don't know.
I know
I have no idea.
He kicked that to the curb. That's it. So
He said that about 2 or 3 times in this interview. He
said,
I do
"I
not,
do not know
how the city of New Orleans conducts its business." I love it.
I think that's a fair
I think
answer.
it
He
is.
doesn't know. He doesn't know.
no, but I was talking about FEMA.
No, you tried to put FEMA in there. You tried.
FEMA's like a bank that watches what it gives. It gives you money, and it's up to you to get it done. They just watch where the money goes, and they make sure that money is allocated appropriately through the state, right? So.
All right. Let me go to Chief Woodfork over here.
Now you're gonna pick on me.
Let's say that we have dewatered the city. Everything is starting to, I don't want to say go back, but we see one of the things that we did not discuss too, the makeup of the city. Because when I came back too, there were folks that were like, it's going to take us a minute to do this. The Superdome top was off, and I know you're going to remember this, but everything that we saw as far as vegetation is concerned was gray. There was nothing alive.
Right.
We had helicopters flying. That's all you heard all day long. And more probably first responders than anything else. At the Superdome were how many people? 25,000?
Approximately.
Was about 25,000?
Approximately.
What did we do with those folks afterwards? Were you a part of? Did we get them out in time?
Yeah, we did. I mean, listen, that was a priority for the mayor, as you heard him say earlier when you played his video where he said he needed 500 buses to get every Greyhound bus in here. When General Honore arrived, that was a part of the conversation about getting those folks out. And General Honore assured us that buses will be in to get people out of the convention center and the Superdome. And I'm going to say within 48 hours, buses were rolling in and rolling out with people. Yeah, so... And understand, General Honore had a direct line to the President of the United States. So one of the comments General Honore said, I asked for this assignment. He said, I have daughters that live here. I'm from Louisiana. I'm Louisiana born and bred. This means something to me. He said, we're going to get it done. And then he wanted, tell us what you need. And myself, Captain Weathersby, Captain Wesley, Mayor Nagin, Terry Everett, and others. We gave made him situationally aware of some of the issues, and all I know is things started rolling. Within 48 hours, things start happening.
We're running out of time, but I want to go to Inside the Eye. As you're writing this book, what stuck out in it with the number of police officers? Because I understand a lot of the police officers have also read this book. And this is, to me, one of those books, when you pick it up and start reading it, you're not going to put it down until you finish.
Listen, since it's been published, I've actually read it 4 more times, right? And I still tear up in certain sections of the book, because this book, I'm going to say that it's 90% true, with the exception of some names were changed, a few names were changed, because people told me their stories, but I didn't get their permission, right? But they told me their stories. What a lot of people don't know is about the alligator attacks. There were a few alligator attacks that occurred where people were actually eyewitnesses in the lower Ninth Ward, saw people eaten by alligators, attacked by alligators on a couple of situations. Nothing stands out more than hearing people in those attics begging and pleading for help. Obviously, that was a situation. Hearing Chris Abbott, that Michelle mentioned earlier, and I interviewed Chris in depth. And Chris, what Michelle didn't mention, while he was trying to get out of the attic, and then I think it was Captain Jimmy Scott who said, "Chris, do you have your gun? Do you see a vent in the attic anywhere?" And he said yes. And Jimmy Scott said, "Shoot around the vent, Chris. You got to get out," because Chris is saying the water's up to my neck. He said, "I'm tired," and he's giving up. And people are trying to encourage him to go. And Jimmy said, Chris said, "Yeah, I have my weapon." He said, "How many rounds do you have?" He said, "I have 2 clips." He said, "Shoot around the edge of that vent." So he shoots around the edge of the vent, and everything goes dead, right? So we don't hear from Chris. We all think that Chris has died, because what happened is he dropped his radio in the water and couldn't find it. So we think he's dead. So the Winds finally get down. Captain Jeff Wynn says, "I'm on the way." He had the Zodiac boat, right? Water rescue team. They went to get Chris. So we don't, and our radio communications then went down completely. So we think Chris is dead. So people are crying, people are upset. We thought we just heard this police officer die. And so I gave the order to evacuate headquarters. So officers were just taking boats and coming to get people, because we probably had 150 people in headquarters. So, and I'm the last one to leave out of headquarters, with the exception of Kurt Borealis, who's now at Tulane University over policing and public safety at Tulane University. Chris, he was staying in the building with a couple of his people to maintain the building. When I come out, there's Chris Abbott on a boat with SOD to help get people out of headquarters.
Oh, wow.
So that was just changed everything right then and there. So, that sticks out. To see these people on Convention Center Boulevard, 90-year-old people, hot, suffering, begging for water, and we're out. We have no food, we have no water, we have nothing to give them. And this is day 3 or 4. People don't realize it's 98 degrees, right? This is not, November, and people are sweating. So people weren't in the convention center. They were sitting outside on the sidewalk, because there was no air in the convention center. So listen, this was another story. There was like 3 or 4 guys, young guys. A couple of them had dreadlocks. They're going in and out of this warehouse. People think that they are breaking in the warehouse. And so I go over, I said, "Man, what are y'all doing?" And it's like, "Man, they got food in there. We're getting food. We're going to cook for people." What you mean going to cook for people? We're going to cook for people. They found a freezer that had thawed some food out. They took food out. They took sternos and clean garbage cans tops that they got out of a warehouse, right? And they put these sternos under these garbage can tops, and they put them on bricks. And they were sauteing food, meat, sausage, and stuff. And they're bringing it, and they said, "Kids only." And I just sat back and let them do their thing. They said, kids first, and then older people. So young people run up there trying to get, because they had found bacon and all sorts of stuff, and they're cooking, and they would only let it go to old people and kids. And I sit back and I admire those 4 young men, right? And they found a way to help, to make a big difference, So stories like that, that people just don't know. I mean, so there's so many good things with all the bad stuff. There's the resiliency and the positivity and the care and concern of so many of our citizens for other citizens. People just don't know that the good side of New Orleans comes out, and it's far better than the bad things that you hear. But we just don't hear about the good things.
That's right. We made it back. In spite of all of that, people wanted to come back home, and we did. And New Orleans is always going to be my home. I'm never going to leave. And no matter how many hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever, I'm going to be right here. Shame on you.
You're not leaving.
I'm not leaving. Who gonna make me?
Ain't that somebody gonna make you?
No, I'm gonna be right.
I just think awful coming
here in the Big Easy.
Where's Mr. Harold, man?
All are invited.
Oh, he gonna call.
All right, Mr. Harold got to call me.
We gotta take a break. We'll take a break here. We'll come back and have some more conversation. Wrap up, y'all. More coming up next.
Y'all have an iPhone charger in here?
Hi, I'm Leo Jackson, host of Sunday Gospel here every Sunday morning, 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 12 o'clock till 2 p.m. You don't want to miss this move of God. It happens only on WBOK. You listen to all day long.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer whenever I want? Can we sleep cooler? Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. 94% of Sleep Number smart sleepers report better sleep. And now, during our biggest sale of the year, save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Plus free home delivery on select smart beds when you add any base. Ends Labor Day. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
At the New Orleans Police Department, we're just like you.
I'm a personal trainer.
I'm a mom.
I'm a dad.
I'm a neighbor.
I'm a friend.
But when I put on this badge, I become something more.
I become a protector.
Servant of the community.
We're here to make a difference because we care, just like you. Become more for your community.
Like us. Apply today.
Visit joinnopd.org.
Hey, have you heard the news? First Pilgrims Baptist Church is now on WBOK 1230 a.m. Tune in every Sunday at 11:30 a.m. to hear Pastor Eugene Mitchell give you the inspiration you need for the week ahead. That's every Sunday morning at 11:30 a.m. only on WBOK 1230 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. It is, what's today? Thursday, August 29th, 2024. 19 years ago, we were all sitting back wondering, what in the world? Where are we going to be? What's going to happen? Am I considered a refugee? Am I going to be able to come back to my house? One of the things, too, that I want to thank you all, because I know we only got about 8 more minutes to go here before we got to get out of here. But I want to take a moment to thank Chief Riley, Chief Woodfork, thank both of you all for participating in this conversation, because I know that sometimes it can bring up some old wounds, make you be thinking about some of the stuff that you had to go through, and sometimes you want to forget about that stuff and move on. But sharing with folks that got stories, because I think the first year I did this and had this conversation, folks were just calling me and telling me what they had to go through. And one of the issues that I also want to put in here was the fact that a lot of folks went through stuff on the highway, getting out, running out of gas, having to go to the bathroom, can't find a hotel. So even though that we say that New Orleans wasn't ready, the world wasn't ready. The other states wasn't ready. Even though that we went through, how many states did you go through? Because I had to go through. Because I ended up going back home to go see my folks. I went through 6 states.
There are people all over the country.
Yeah.
And that's true. I mean,
I went through at least 6 states. And when I got home, I'm thinking that it's going to be a, comfortable time for me, da-da-da-da. But my mother and my grandmother had called everybody and told them, well, he on the way. Because they knew that I was here. And so everybody's calling her to tell her that, is he still down there? Is he okay? Da-da-da. Have you heard from him? And then the other part of that, I want y'all to comment on this, communication. Communications had shut down. How was it for the police department though?
Everything was down. The
'Cause we
radio.
had to- that's when we started texting.
The radio system and no, the cell phones. What was working? Verizon. Which one of them? Something was one. Only one was working. The rest of them
At some
weren't
point, almost
working.
everything went down, I believe. I didn't have a Nextel, but I know most of our phones went down.
Yeah.
The radio system went down. We had what's called a mutual aid channel, which is those are antennas where every parish's police department radios automatically hit off. So there was garbled. You couldn't understand what was going on. That's all the communication that we had. And we probably, in our antenna, the antenna for our main radio system was on the roof of the Entergy building over on Porter Street on 44 stories up. And what happened was that the generator, there was a hose that goes from the generator to the antenna, something sheared the hose. So it wasn't getting the field. So maybe on the fourth day, our technical people went up. They had to walk up 44 flights of stairs, and then they found out what the problem was. So then they had to get fuel up there. They had to repair the line, so they get helicopters to fly the fuel up and drop it on the roof because you couldn't walk up with these barrels of containers of fuel. So, that was just another challenge. So we literally only had mutual aid radio communication for maybe 5 days.
And that wasn't a lot because they didn't have power for a while, and you had to charge the radios we had
Right.
had to be recharged.
Right.
And so if you no power,
And
recharge.
look, and we had you all have heard of Mike Glass. Mike Glasser's with one of the unions, and Mike Glasser some sort of way went to a gas station. He rigged up some sort of contraption, and started draining gas from the gas because all the power was out to
You
fill
couldn't
up
pump the
some of
gas.
the
Yeah, you
cars
couldn't
because our
pump
cars
it.
were out of gas.
You couldn't pump.
So that was his own ingenuity and how he did it, but that's how we started filling up cars. So there was a lot of resiliency and innovation that went on, right? Listen, it was an emergency.
Yes. It really was.
It was an
No,
emergency.
but I'm laughing because he's
was an
right.
emergency.
And,
Yes.
we just rigged stuff up. I'm gonna just say that we had a lot of rigged stuff up, but it worked for a while. It did what we needed it to do, and the gas thing
Right.
was one of the things. You had to make it work.
Right.
You had to
And
find a way to make it work.
A funny part of it was Manuel Curry, who was probably 80 years old when Hurricane Katrina hit. He landed on the Iwo Jima. He was a war veteran, a hero. He was the oldest law enforcement officer in the country at the time. And I saw him on Magazine Street. I think the guy was St. Pierre he was with. And I'm like, Sergeant Curry, we told you could leave. You don't have to stay. He said, you leave, you coward. I'm not going nowhere, right? He said, you leave. He refused to leave.
Yeah.
And he was 80
He
years
stayed
old.
right
and
there
he
with us.
refused to leave.
How about if something like this happens again?
For me, I'll see you later. I'm out.
You gone?
What am I mistake for?
What's your expertise?
I'm out of here.
How about they ask you to stay? Could you help us?
Everything's negotiable.
Everything's. Chief Woodport?
I am no longer a essential personnel, so
With your expertise as
it's
well?
gonna be hard for me to go. I don't even know how to go, because I've been here 33 years and had to stay. So that'll be quite different unless I'm asked to stay for some reason or another. I'm gonna take my son and my parents, and I'm out of here.
All right, my last question. I got one more question. What's next for you? You know I'm going to ask. Don't give me that look because them lasers just cut through me right there. I'm just saying. What's next?
Friday? What?
What's next for you?
I'm just living the life of Raleigh.
Just living the life of Raleigh?
No, I'm going to continue to serve in the capacity that I am now, and that's with the DA's office. I am the director of forensics and intelligence.
Can you explain what that is?
I
'Cause
definitely can.
We have not really
I
had that
definitely
conversation.
can. I am the director of our OSINT team, which is open source intelligence data, but it's an open source intelligence task force. We scrub social media. We look for that extra evidence that try to find that extra clue in order to help the NOPD maybe identify another suspect, identify a witness, more information. And we're talking about pages and pages of information from social media, maybe from an Instagram account, it may be from a TikTok account, it may be from Cash App or something like that. But that's what we do in order to help the NOPD secure arrest, in order for us to shore up a case or an investigation for the prosecutors at the DA's office to get an indictment or a conviction. So that is what my job is. So, yeah.
And that's part of your expertise, so you're good at that.
Investigating. Yeah, that's what I'm a street cop through and through and through.
All right.
Okay. I just want to say that these are the types of important conversations that we need to be having when it comes to remembering Hurricane Katrina. And I just want to circle back to the fact that the Hip Hop Caucus and the National, the New Orleans Katrina Memorial Foundation wants to be able to engage these conversations, and they're planning on putting forth in this year resolutions to make it at least a local or at max a state holiday that would allow people to be off so that they can participate in building around this subject and preparing us for years to come.
We got to get out, but I do want to thank Chief Warren Riley, Chief Michelle Woodfork for being a part of this. They can get your book where?
Online at Barnes & Noble and Amazon.
Your book coming?
It's coming.
It's coming. There we go. And thank you to former Mayor Ray Nagin as well for being a part of this. All right, folks, that's going to wrap things up for us. We'll be back on tomorrow. Right now, it's the Sports Report at 4 o'clock, y'all. Y'all have a great day.
From the campus of Xavier University.
Look.